A wrong number can't change your life. That's what they tell you. That's what Elena Marsh believed as she fumbled with her phone in the sterile silence of St. Catherine's Hospital, her trembling fingers barely able to dial. She was trying to reach her ex-boyfriend, the one who'd promised to be there in emergencies, the one who'd left her 3 months ago for someone more exciting. But desperation makes you do foolish things at 2:47 a.m. when you're bleeding and alone. She didn't notice the transposed digits, didn't realize that instead of reaching Derek's mundane cell phone, she'd somehow connected to a number that shouldn't exist in any human directory. The voice that answered was velvet and smoke. Authority wrapped in midnight. Who dares call this line? Elena should have hung up, should have recognized that this wasn't Derek's irritated grumble. But the pain in her abdomen was blinding, and the words tumbled out. Please, I need help. St. Catherine's Hospital, room 237. I'm bleeding, and the nurses won't listen, and I don't know what's happening to me. Silence. Then, barely a whisper that somehow felt like thunder. Hold on, I'm coming. The line went dead. Elena would later remember thinking how strange it was, how a wrong number to a stranger had sounded more concerned than the man she'd dated for 2 years. But she couldn't have known the truth, that she hadn't called a stranger at all. She'd called him, Kale Thornwood, the Lycan King of the Northern Territories, a creature who hadn't responded to a human's plea in over a century. And she definitely couldn't have known that by dawn, when the first silver rays crept through her hospital window, 30 silver wolves would be sitting in absolute silence in the parking lot below, their eyes fixed on her room, their king standing among them in human form, his gaze locked on the window of room 237, all because of a wrong number. All because some mistakes are actually destiny wearing a disguise. Elena Marsh had always been the forgettable one, not ugly that would have at least been memorable, not particularly beautiful either. She existed in that cruel middle ground where people's eyes would slide right past her in a crowd, where she'd been called sweetie and hun by strangers who couldn't be bothered to ask her actual name. At 26, she worked as a medical transcriptionist at the very hospital where she now lay bleeding. Third shift. Basement office, transcribing doctor's notes that would be reviewed by people who'd never once stopped by to introduce themselves. She'd been there for 4 years. Her supervisor still called her Emma. Her apartment was a studio in the deteriorating East Side, the kind of place where the heater only worked on Tuesdays and the neighbors pretended you didn't exist. Which was fine, because Elena had grown accustomed to invisibility. Her younger sister, Christine, was the beautiful one. The one their mother had dressed in ribbons and paraded at church socials. The one who'd married a dentist at 23 and now posted Instagram photos of her perfect kitchen renovations, and her golden retriever puppy named Cappuccino. Their mother had made her preferences clear early. Elena, darling, could you stand to the side for this photo? Christine's dress is so lovely, we want it to be the focus. Elena, sweetheart, maybe don't come to the graduation party. Christine's friends are all so glamorous, and you know how you get anxious in crowds. Elena, honey, I think it's wonderful that you're focusing on your career. Not every woman needs marriage and children. The unspoken message was clear. You're lucky to have a career, because no one's going to choose you for anything else. Derek had been the exception, or so she'd thought. They'd met at the hospital cafeteria. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep who visited twice a month. He'd actually looked at her, actually asked her name and remembered it. For 2 years, Elena had believed she'd finally been chosen, finally been seen. Then she'd overheard him on the phone 3 months ago, laughing with his friend. Elena? She's comfortable, like a good couch. But Madison, man, Madison is like a sports car. You don't marry the couch when the Ferrari wants you. He'd left her that same week, moved in with Madison within days. Elena had signed the lease removal papers without protest, packed his things neatly, and added his number to her emergency contacts because, well, what else did she have? Tonight proved how pathetic that was. She'd woken at 2 a.m. with cramping so severe she'd vomited. By 2:30 she was bleeding, not menstrual bleeding. Something else. Something wrong. She'd driven herself to St. Catherine's, where she worked but apparently didn't matter, and checked into the ER. The night nurse Shanice, who Elena had transcribed reports for dozens of times, had barely glanced at her. Probably just a bad period, Honorable, take some ibuprofen. But the pain is different, and there's so much blood. Girl, you work here. You know how backed up we are on a Friday night. Unless you're dying, you need to wait your turn. Elena had waited. And waited. 2 hours in a hallway bed, watching nurses rush past to attend to louder, more insistent patients. The man who'd come in after her, demanding treatment for his sprained ankle, had already been seen and discharged. She'd texted Christine. At hospital. Something wrong. Scared. Christine's response came 20 minutes later. Can't talk, girls' weekend in wine country. Try not to be dramatic, you know how you get. That's when Elena had decided to call Derek. Pride be damned, she was genuinely frightened. Surely he'd remember that they'd once meant something to each other. Surely he'd come. Her hands had been shaking so badly that she'd misdialed. And now, 15 minutes after that impossible phone call, Elena lay in the converted storage room. They'd finally moved her to room 237, which wasn't even a real patient room but a place they put overflow cases, staring at the water-stained ceiling tiles and wondering if she was delirious. Because that voice on the phone, it had sounded like it cared. Like her pain had personally offended whoever owned that voice. Like he'd move mountains to reach her. Which was insane. She'd called a wrong number. Some stranger who'd probably already forgotten about the confused woman who'd woken him at 3 a.m. Elena closed her eyes, fresh tears sliding down her temples. This is what you get for mattering to no one, she thought. You can't even get proper medical attention at the hospital where you work. She didn't notice the temperature in the room dropping. Didn't see the way the fluorescent lights began to flicker. Didn't hear the sudden, absolute silence that fell over the entire third floor like the building itself was holding its breath. But she felt something change. Some fundamental shift in the air pressure, in the quality of reality itself. And then, from the hallway, she heard it. A low, rumbling growl that made every primitive instinct in her body scream predator. Followed by Nurse Shanice's voice, high and terrified. Sir, you can't be back here. Sir. SIR. I'm calling security. The door to room 237 opened. Elena's breath stopped. The man who entered shouldn't exist. 6.5 feet of barely contained power, wearing what had probably started as an expensive suit, but now looked rumpled, like he'd thrown it on in seconds. Dark hair that fell to his collar, silver at the temples, eyes that were the color of amber with something else moving behind them, something that reflected light, like an animal's. But it was his presence that hit her like a physical force. The way the room suddenly felt too small. The way her instincts were screaming two contradictory things at once. Run and safe. He crossed to her bedside in 3 strides. Those impossible eyes scanning her from head to toe with an intensity that should have been frightening, but instead felt like being truly seen for the first time in her entire life. Elena Marsh, he said, and his voice was the same velvet and smoke from the phone. Tell me exactly what's wrong. How do you know my name? You called me. You said you needed help. His hand moved to hover over her abdomen, not touching, but she felt heat radiating from his palm. His eyes narrowed. How long have you been bleeding? 2 hours, but I don't understand. Did they examine you? The nurse said it was probably just. His head snapped toward the door, where Nurse Shanice had appeared with 2 security guards. The look he gave them made all 3 stumble backward. The woman in this room, he said quietly, dangerously, has been hemorrhaging for 2 hours from an ectopic pregnancy that is currently rupturing. In approximately 8 minutes, her fallopian tube will burst completely, and she will bleed to death internally, and you told her to take ibuprofen. The silence that followed was suffocating. Get Dr. Reeves, Shanice whispered. Get him now. The security guards ran. Elena stared up at the impossible man. How do you know that? He finally looked back at her, and for just a moment, something ancient and inhuman flickered behind those amber eyes. Because I can smell the internal bleeding. Because your scent is wrong, pain and fear, and something dying inside you. His jaw clenched. You should have called me hours ago. I didn't call you. I don't even know who you are. I was trying to reach my ex-boyfriend. Then fate intervened. He moved closer, and impossibly, his hand was suddenly holding hers. His skin was burning hot. I'm Kale Thornwood, and you're going to be fine, Elena. I give you my word. Mr. Thornwood, You need to leave while we prep her for emergency surgery. Dr. Reeves had arrived, looking terrified and professional in equal measure. Kale didn't move. She goes into surgery with the best surgeon you have. She gets every resource this hospital possesses. And I will be here when she wakes up. Are we clear? It wasn't a question. Dr. Reeves swallowed hard. Crystal clear, sir. As they wheeled Elena toward the surgical wing, her hands still clasped in Kale's, she caught a glimpse through the window. The eastern sky was just beginning to lighten with pre-dawn gray, and in the parking lot below, sitting in perfect formation, like a military unit, were dozens of massive dogs. No, not dogs. Wolves. Silver-coated wolves with eyes that glowed in the darkness. All of them staring up at her window. Elena's vision was going hazy from blood loss, but she heard Kale's voice one more time as they reached the operating room doors. Sleep, Elena Marsh. When you wake, everything will be different. You called for help, and the king answered. That debt doesn't end with surgery. The last thing she saw before anesthesia took her was his eyes, amber bleeding to molten silver, and the absolute certainty that she'd just stepped out of her invisible, forgettable life, and into a world where she was suddenly, inexplicably, visible. If stories like Elena's speak to you, stories about invisible women who discover their worth moving mountains for, subscribe to join others who believe that sometimes a wrong number is actually destiny calling you home. Chapter 1. The Silver Court. Elena woke to the smell of pine and something else, something wild and electric that made her hindbrain whisper danger. Her eyes fluttered open. White ceiling. Beeping monitors. The familiar antiseptic smell of hospital rooms, but underneath it, that other scent. Alive. Primal. You're awake. She turned her head too quickly. A mistake that sent a wave of dizziness through her, and found Kale Thornwood sitting in the visitor's chair. He hadn't left. It was daylight now, bright morning sun streaming through the window, and he was still there. He looked different in full daylight, less like a fever dream, more like something carved from marble and moonlight. The expensive suit was definitely rumpled now, his tie loosened, top button undone. He'd been here all night. For her. A stranger. The surgery went well, he said, his voice gentler than she remembered. Dr. Reeves removed the ectopic pregnancy. Your left fallopian tube was damaged, but you'll recover fully. You'll be able to have children, if you choose. Elena blinked back sudden tears. Thank you. I don't understand why you came, but thank you. You called me. I called a wrong number. No. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, those amber eyes pinning her in place. You called exactly the right number, Elena Marsh. The question is why? I was trying to reach my ex-boyfriend. I know. Derek Morrison, pharmaceutical sales, currently cohabitating with Madison Chen in a condo he cannot actually afford. Kale's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered through his eyes. He received 17 missed calls and 12 text messages from you over the past 3 months. He's responded to none of them. Yet you kept his number listed as your emergency contact. Elena felt her face burn with humiliation. How do you know that? Because I had someone look into your life while you were in surgery. I needed to understand who you are and why my private line, a number that hasn't been dialed by a human in over a century, suddenly rang at 2:47 this morning with your voice on it. Your private line? I don't understand. I just misdialed Derek's number. Show me. He pulled out his phone, opened it, handed it to her. Pull up your call history. Elena's hands shook as she took his phone. It was warm, like everything about him seemed to radiate heat, and navigated to recent calls. There at the top, her number, time-stamped 2:47 a.m. She pulled out her own phone from the side table, checked her outgoing calls. The number she'd dialed looked nothing like Derek's. Derek's number, 503-555-7849. The number she'd actually called, 503555 Howl. That's not possible. I couldn't have dialed letters. Yet you did. Kale took his phone back, his fingers brushing hers. That same electric heat. Howl translates to 4,695 inches standard dialing. But that number shouldn't exist in your realm. It exists in mine. Your realm. Elena laughed, slightly hysterical. Are you telling me I accidentally called? What? Narnia? Middle-earth? Something like that. He stood, moved to the window. In the daylight, she could see how he moved too fluid, too predatory, like violence wrapped in a gentleman's skin. Tell me, Elena, what do you know about lycanthropes? Her mouth went dry. Werewolves? Their mythology, stories. Most mythology is just history that humans have forgotten. He turned back to her, and for just a second, his eyes flashed silver. Completely inhuman silver. I am Kale Thornwood, king of the northern Lycan territories. I rule over 17 packs, approximately 3,000 wolves, and territories spanning from Vancouver to the California border. Elena should have laughed, should have called for security, should have done anything except whisper. The wolves in the parking lot. My court, he confirmed. 30 of my most trusted. When their king receives a distress call and leaves the territory at 3 a.m., they follow. Protocol and protection. This is insane. Yes, I'm hallucinating. The anesthesia. You're not hallucinating, Elena. You're just learning that the world is larger and stranger than you were taught. He moved back to her bedside, and impossibly, sat on the edge of her bed, close enough that she could feel that radiating heat again. Here's what we know. You dialed a number that exists outside human telecommunications. You reached my personal line, a line keyed to magical frequency, one that only opens for supernatural beings or humans with latent abilities. And when I heard your voice, he trailed off, jaw clenching. What? Elena whispered. Every instinct I possess screamed at me to reach you, to protect you, to claim. He stopped abruptly, stood again, paced to the window. We need to determine why you could access that line, why your distress call felt like a summons I couldn't ignore, why my wolf is currently trying to claw its way out of my skin because you're in pain and I can't fix it fast enough. Elena's heart was hammering. Your wolf. The beast inside me. Every lycanthrope has two forms, human and wolf. Right now, mine is agitated because you're injured and vulnerable, and every protective instinct is firing. He shot her a look over his shoulder. I haven't felt this unstable in decades. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. The command in his voice made her spine straighten involuntarily. You did nothing wrong. You called for help when you needed it. That's brave, Elena. Even if you meant to call an ex-boyfriend who abandoned you. The gentle way he said, abandoned, somehow hurt worse than Christine's dismissal or her mother's indifference. I'm nobody. Elena heard herself say. I'm the forgettable one. There's no reason a Lycan King should care if I live or die. Kale was across the room in a heartbeat, moving faster than human sight could track. Suddenly he was there, hands on either side of her bed, caging her in, his face inches from hers. Listen to me very carefully. His voice was rough, barely controlled. You are not nobody. You are a woman whose distress call breached dimensional barriers. You are someone my wolf has decided matters. And in my world, Elena Marsh, that makes you someone very important indeed. Why? The word came out as a breath. His eyes amber shot through with silver held hers. That's what we're going to find out. But first, you're going to heal. You're going to rest, and you're going to let me protect you, while we determine what you truly are. What I am. I'm a medical transcriptionist who lives alone and gets forgotten at family gatherings. You're a woman who accidentally called a king and made him come running. The corner of his mouth lifted. Trust me, that's never happened before. A knock at the door broke the moment. Kale straightened, that predatory intensity banking into something more civilized as Dr. Reeves entered. Miss Marsh, how are you feeling? Confused, Elena admitted. Understandable. You've been through a trauma. Doctor. Reeves glanced at Kale nervously. Mr. Thornwood has requested that you be moved to a private suite for recovery. The hospital administration has. Agreed. I can't afford. It's handled, Kale said smoothly. You'll stay under medical supervision for 48 hours. After that, we'll discuss next steps. Next steps? He smiled. And it was beautiful and terrible. You breached the veil between worlds, Elena. Accidentally or not, You've been noticed by the supernatural community. I need to determine if you're dormant-born someone with latent magical blood, or if you're simply human with extraordinary luck. Either way, until we know what you are and why you could reach me, you're under my protection. I don't need protection. 3 hours ago, you were bleeding to death in a storage room because nobody thought you mattered enough to examine properly. His voice went cold. That doesn't happen to people under my protection, ever. Dr. Reeves cleared his throat. I'll have the nurses prep the suite transfer. Miss Marsh, you'll be much more comfortable. After he left, Elena stared at Kale. I don't understand any of this. I know. He moved to the door, paused. But you will. Rest now. When you wake, you'll be in the private wing. My people will be guarding your door. You're safe, Elena. I'm Sediner. From what? His expression darkened. From anyone who might want to use you. Because a human who can call a Lycan King across dimensional barriers, that's either a weapon or a miracle. And there are those in my world who would kill to possess either. He left before she could respond. Elena lay back against the pillows, head spinning with more than anesthesia. Werewolves. Dimensional barriers. Protection. None of this makes sense. But as they wheeled her to the private suite an hour later, a room that looked more like a luxury hotel than a hospital, with guards posted outside who moved like Kale did, too fluid and too aware, Elena couldn't shake one truth. For the first time in her entire forgettable life, someone powerful had looked at her and decided she mattered, even if she didn't understand why, even if it terrified her. Someone had finally seen her, and he had silver eyes and called himself a king. Chapter 2. The Scent of Secrets. Elena woke to voices outside her door. Absolutely not. The king said no visitors except medical staff. I'm her sister. You can't seriously expect me to believe. Christine. Elena's heart did a complicated twist. Her sister had come, actually driven from wine country to check on her. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe Christine did care. Ma'am, I don't care if you're the Queen of England. King's orders are absolute. Miss Marsh is recovering from emergency surgery and is not to be disturbed. King? What king? This is a hospital in Portland, not some medieval. The door opened, but it wasn't Christine who entered. It was a woman who moved like liquid mercury, tall, dark-skinned, with close-cropped hair and eyes that flashed yellow in the morning light. She wore black tactical gear that looked both expensive and functional, and she radiated the same dangerous energy as Kale. Your sister is making a scene, the woman said without preamble. The king wants to know if you wish to see her. Elena struggled to sit up. He's asking my permission? You're under his protection. That means your comfort matters. The woman's expression softened slightly. I'm Vera, captain of the King's Guard. I've been watching over you while you slept. How long was I asleep? 14 hours. It's Sunday morning. Vera moved to adjust Elena's pillows with surprising gentleness. Your body needed the rest. Healing from both physical trauma and the shock of learning our world exists. I'm still not sure I believe. Vera's eyes flashed completely yellow, and for a heartbeat, Elena saw the wolf looking out from behind them. Okay. Elena breathed. I believe. The wolf retreated. Vera smiled. Good. Now, about your sister. Do you want to see her? Did she? Elena thought about Christine's text. Try not to be dramatic. You know how you get. What's she saying out there? Vera's expression turned carefully neutral. That she's concerned about you. That she drove 3 hours to check on you. That it's unreasonable for hospital security to block family access. She didn't drive 3 hours out of concern, Elena said quietly. She drove 3 hours because someone told her something strange was happening, and Christine has always been curious about things that might affect her reputation. Perceptive. Vera tilted her head, studying her. The king said you'd been invisible to your family. He wasn't exaggerating. How much did he tell you about me? Everything. When the king brings a human under his protection, the entire court needs to understand the situation. Vera sat in the visitor's chair, Kale's chair, Elena realized. Had he really stayed all night? He told us about the misdialed number, about your bleeding and the hospital's negligence, about how his wolf reacted to your distress call. How did it react? Vera's eyes went distant. I've served Kale Thornwood for 23 years. I've seen him in battle, in rage, in grief when his father died. I've never seen him move the way he moved when your call came through. Like someone had reached into his chest and yanked. I don't understand why. Neither does he. That's what makes this interesting. Vera leaned forward. In our world, Elena, there are bonds. Fated connections between souls. The most powerful is the mate bond when a wolf recognizes their true match. But that's supposed to happen through scent, through proximity, through the wolf claiming its other half. It doesn't happen through a phone call from a human who shouldn't be able to reach our realm at all. Elena's mouth went dry. You think we're mates? I think something connected you to him in a way that shouldn't be possible. And until we understand what, you're either in grave danger or under the protection of the most powerful lycanthrope in the Western Territories. Possibly both. A crash from the hallway interrupted them. I don't care about your protocols. That's my sister, and I have a right. The door banged open. Christine stood there, face flushed with anger and indignation, her designer yoga outfit somehow still pristine. Behind her, 2 guards looked apologetic. She pushed past during shift change. One muttered, "It's fine," Elena said quietly. "Let her in." Christine's expression shifted instantly from anger to concern. The performance was flawless. She rushed to Elena's bedside, reaching for her hand. "Oh my God, Elena. I was so worried. When the hospital called and said you'd had emergency surgery, I drove straight back from Napa. Why didn't you tell me it was serious? I texted you at 2 a.m. You said I was being dramatic." A flicker of something guilt? Annoyance? Crossed Christine's face. "I was drunk, honey. Girls' weekend. You know how wine country is. I didn't realize you were actually in danger. I told you I was at the hospital. You're always anxious about your health. Remember when you thought you had a brain tumor, and it was just a migraine?" Christine squeezed her hand, but her eyes were scanning the room, taking in the luxury suite, the guards at the door. "What's going on, Elena? Mom said someone called her saying you were in protective custody? Like witness protection or something?" "Who called Mom?" "The hospital administrator. Said there were special circumstances around your case and that only approved visitors could see you. I had to argue for 20 minutes just to get up here." Christine's eyes narrowed. "And who are all these people? Security guards in a hospital? This is insane." Vera stood smoothly. "Miss Marsh is recovering from a serious medical emergency. The circumstances surrounding her treatment required additional security measures." "What circumstances? What aren't you telling me?" Christine looked between them. "Elena, are you in some kind of trouble?" "No, because if you've gotten involved with something illegal, it'll reflect on the whole family. Stephen is up for partner at his firm, and we can't have any scandals." "Christine." Elena pulled her hand away. "I nearly died. I had an ectopic pregnancy that ruptured. I was hemorrhaging for hours before anyone took me seriously. That's what happened. There's no scandal." Christine's expression shifted. Was that disappointment? "Oh. Well. I'm sorry you went through that. But why the guards?" "Because I requested them." Kale's voice cut through the room like a blade. He stood in the doorway, and Elena's breath caught. He'd changed clothes, dark slacks, charcoal sweater that did nothing to hide the predatory grace of his build. His hair was still damp, like he'd just showered, and those amber eyes were fixed on Christine with an intensity that made Elena's sister actually step backward. "Who are you?" Christine demanded, recovering her bravado. "Kale Thornwood. I'm the man who saved your sister's life." He moved into the room, and Elena watched Christine's expression shift from suspicion to fascination. Women always looked at Kale that way, she realized. Like he was something dangerous they wanted to touch anyway. "You're the one who called the administrator," Christine said. "They said someone very important had taken an interest in Elena's case." "Are you a doctor?" "No." "Lawyer?" "No." "Then what gives you the right to post guards outside my sister's room and restrict family access?" Kale smiled, and it was all teeth. "The right of someone who actually showed up when she needed help. Unlike her family, who were too busy with wine tastings to respond to her emergency." Christine flushed. That's not fair. Fair? Kale's voice dropped to something dangerous. Your sister texted you at 2 a.m., saying she was at the hospital and scared. You told her not to be dramatic. She called well. She tried to call someone else for help because her own family had made it clear she didn't matter. That's what's not fair, Miss Marsh. You don't know anything about our family. I know enough. He moved to stand beside Elena's bed, and his presence was overwhelming. Protective. I know that Elena works at this hospital and still had to wait 2 hours for treatment because no one thought she was important enough to examine. I know she's been invisible to people who should have cherished her. That ends now. Christine's eyes widened, then narrowed. Are you two together? We're, Elena started. Complicated, Kale finished. But yes. Elena is under my personal protection. That makes her very important to me and to my people. Your people, Christine laughed, sharp and disbelieving. What are you, in the mafia? Something like that. Kale's smile widened. Now, Miss Marsh, you've confirmed your sister is alive and recovering. I suggest you return to your wine country weekend and your Instagram-worthy existence. Elena needs rest, not performance anxiety. Excuse me. You're excused. It wasn't loud, but the command in Kale's voice made Christine actually flinch. She turned to Elena, and for a moment, something almost genuine flickered across her face. Elena, are you okay? Really? I will be, Elena said quietly. And you want him involved? Elena looked at Kale, this impossible man who'd raced to her side in the middle of the night, who'd stayed through her surgery, who'd seen her and decided she mattered. Yes. Christine nodded slowly. Then she leaned down, whispered low enough that maybe she thought only Elena could hear. He's dangerous, Ellie. I can feel it. Be careful. But Kale heard, of course he heard, with his supernatural senses, and he smiled. Your sister is finally right about something. I am very dangerous, Elena. But never to you. Christine left with one backward glance, confusion and something almost like envy written across her face. When the door closed, Elena sagged back against the pillows. You didn't have to be so harsh with her. Yes, I did. Kale sat on the edge of her bed again, and his hand found hers. That electric heat. People who've made you feel invisible don't get to waltz in and play concerned family when it suits them. You deserve better. You barely know me. I know enough. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I know you called for help, even though everyone in your life had taught you that you didn't deserve it. I know you're stronger than you think, and I know that whatever connection exists between us, it's real enough that my wolf won't let me leave your side. Vera said something about mate bonds. Kale's jaw clenched. It's possible, but also impossible because you're human and I'm not. Those bonds don't form across species boundaries. Yet, here we are. So what happens now? Now? He stood, but kept her hand in his. Now you heal. In 2 days, you'll be discharged. And then, Elena Marsh. You're coming home with me. Home? To the territory. Where we can figure out what you are and why you could call me. Where you'll be safe while we unravel this mystery. His eyes held hers. Unless you'd rather go back to your studio apartment, and your basement office, and your invisible life? Elena thought about her apartment, her job, her family who only called when they needed something, her ex-boyfriend who'd compared her to a couch. Then she thought about the way Kale looked at her like she was a puzzle worth solving, a person worth protecting, someone who mattered. I'll come with you, she whispered. His smile was fierce and beautiful. Good. Because I wasn't actually giving you a choice. Chapter 3. Blood Moon Rising. The private suite had become Elena's gilded cage. For 2 days, she'd been poked and prodded by doctors who looked at her with newfound respect. Or was it fear? Dr. Reeves checked on her every 4 hours like clockwork. Nurses appeared with medications she didn't remember ordering. And always, there were the guards. Vera rotated shifts with others. Dominic, a mountain of a man with kind eyes. Sienna, who looked barely 20 but moved like death. Marcus, no. He'd introduced himself as, just call me Rook, who had silver scars across his knuckles. and a smile that never reached his eyes. They were all lycanthropes, all part of Kale's court, and they all treated Elena like she was made of spun glass and dynamite. It was Monday evening when Kale arrived with clothes. "Discharge papers are signed," he announced, setting down several expensive-looking shopping bags. "Your personal belongings have been collected from your apartment. You'll stay at the Territory estate until we determine what you are." Elena looked up from the book. Vera had brought her a romance novel, ironically about a woman who falls for a vampire. "You went to my apartment?" "Sienna did. With your keys." He pulled out a designer outfit, dark jeans, a cashmere sweater in deep green, boots that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "These are for travel. The rest of your wardrobe is being updated as we speak." "Updated? You'll need appropriate clothing for the Territory. What you had was..." He paused diplomatically. "Insufficient." Elena felt her face heat with humiliation. "My clothes were fine. Your clothes were designed to help you disappear." Kale sat beside her, and his hand cupped her chin, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "No more disappearing, Elena. You're with me now. People will look at you. You might as well give them something worth seeing. I'm not a doll you can dress up. No. You're a woman who's been taught to minimize herself for everyone else's comfort." His thumb traced her jawline. "That ends tonight. When you walk into my territory, you walk in as someone under the king's protection. That means you dress the part, you carry yourself with confidence, and you let everyone see what I see. And what's that? Someone worth moving mountains for." He released her, stood. "Get dressed. We leave in an hour." He left before she could argue. Vera appeared moments later, helping Elena navigate the unfamiliar luxury of the new clothes. The jeans fit perfectly. How had they known her size? The sweater was softer than anything she'd ever owned, and the boots made her feel powerful in a way her old sneakers never had. "You look good," Vera said, studying her. "The king has excellent taste." "This is insane. 3 days ago, I was bleeding out in a storage room. Now I'm wearing designer clothes and going to live with werewolves." "Lycanthropes," Vera corrected with a slight smile. "Werewolf is what humans call us when they're scared. We prefer the term that acknowledges both halves, Lycan and Anthropos, human and wolf. 3 days ago, I didn't believe in either." Elena looked at her reflection in the bathroom mirror. She looked different, put together, visible. "Vera, what if this is all a mistake? What if I'm just a normal human who misdialed a number? Then why hasn't the king left your side?" Vera leaned against the doorframe. "Kale Thornwood is centuries old, Elena. He's seen empires rise and fall. He's fought wars, negotiated treaties, ruled over thousands. He doesn't waste time on mistakes. Maybe I'm a curiosity, something to study and then discard when he's bored." Vera's expression turned serious. "Has he touched you?" Elena blinked. "What? Has the king touched you? Your hand, your face, casual contact?" Yes. Several times. Why? Because Kale doesn't touch people. Not casually. Not unless they matter." Vera pushed off the doorframe. "I've served him for over 2 decades. I've seen him maintain perfect physical distance from everyone except his inner court. He shook hands with a visiting alpha once. And afterward, I heard him tell Dominic that the contact made his skin crawl." Elena remembered the electric heat of Kale's touch, the way it felt right rather than intrusive. "So what does it mean?" "It means whatever bond exists between you two. It's real enough that his wolf accepts you, craves contact with you. That's not something that happens with curiosities." Vera smiled. "Come on, the king gets irritable when people are late." The SUV waiting outside the hospital was matte black and absurdly luxurious. Kale sat in the back, on his phone, speaking in a language Elena didn't recognize, all hard consonants and rolling vowels that sounded ancient. He switched to English when she climbed in beside him. "Understood. I'll handle it when we arrive." He ended the call, turned to her. "How do you feel?" "Like I'm in a fever dream." "Give it time. The territory will help." Being surrounded by pack energy either clarifies things or drives humans insane. "But you don't strike me as the type to break easily." "That's not reassuring." He smiled. "It wasn't meant to be." The drive took them out of Portland, heading east into the Cascade foothills. The city lights faded, replaced by towering pines and mountain darkness. Elena watched the landscape change, her heart hammering with equal parts fear and anticipation. "What happens when we get there?" she asked after 20 minutes of silence. "You'll be shown to guest quarters in the main house. You'll meet the senior court, the alphas, who govern the various packs under my rule. Tomorrow, we'll begin testing." "Testing?" "To determine if you're dormant-born human with latent supernatural ancestry, or if you're something else entirely." Kale's expression grew serious. "There are complications." "What kind of complications?" 3 days from now is the blood moon, a lunar eclipse that occurs once every 7 years. It's a time when the veil between worlds grows thin, when magic is amplified, when bonds form more easily. He turned to face her fully. "If you are my mate, the blood moon will complete the bond whether we're ready or not." Elena's breath caught. "And if I'm not? Then we'll know within 72 hours, and you'll be free to return to your human life with financial compensation and magical protections to ensure no supernatural being ever harms you." It should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt like a countdown to something irreversible. What does a mate bond actually mean? Kale was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. "It means your soul is bound to mine. Your life becomes entwined with my own. You would feel what I feel, know when I'm in danger, hurt when I hurt. It means you'd be queen of the Northern Territories, with all the power and danger that entails. And for you?" His eyes flashed silver in the darkness. "It means I would burn down the world to keep you safe. It means I would never be able to hurt you, even if I wanted to. It means centuries of solitary existence would end because I'd finally found the other half of my soul." His jaw clenched. "It's not a choice, Elena. The bond either exists or it doesn't. And if it does, fighting it will only cause both of us pain. That sounds like a prison. To humans, perhaps. To lycanthropes, it's the greatest gift the moon can give." He looked away, out at the darkened forest. "But you're right to be afraid. Becoming my mate would mean giving up your human life entirely. You'd live for centuries. You'd be a target for my enemies. You'd rule alongside me, make decisions that affect thousands of lives. It's not a fairy tale, Elena. It's a crown of thorns." "Why me?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "You're a king. You could have anyone. Why would fate choose someone like me?" Kale turned back to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath stop. "Because you're strong enough to stand beside a monster and not flinch. Because you've survived invisibility and neglect, and still had the courage to call for help. Because when I heard your voice on that phone, something in me recognized something in you." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "And because my wolf has decided you're ours, Elena Marsh, whether you're ready or not." The SUV turned onto a private road, marked only by 2 enormous stone pillars. No signs, no gates, just an understanding that this was territory, and trespassers were not welcome. The forest grew denser, older. Elena could feel something in the air. A thrumming energy that made her skin prickle. "We're crossing the ward line," Kale said quietly. "The magical barrier that protects the territory. If you were fully human with no supernatural blood, you'd feel nothing. But if you're dormant-born," Elena gasped. It felt like walking through a waterfall of electricity, not painful, but shocking, awakening. Every nerve ending came alive, and for a moment, she could feel the forest around her, the ancient trees, the watching eyes, the pack bonds crisscrossing like golden threads through the darkness. Then it faded, leaving her breathless. Kale's hand was suddenly gripping hers. "You felt it. What was that?" "Proof that you're not fully human." His voice held equal parts satisfaction and concern. "Dormant-born react to wards. Pure humans don't." The house, no. The estate emerged from the forest like something from a dream. Part modern architecture, part ancient lodge, all glass and timber and stone. Lights blazed from dozens of windows, and as the SUV pulled up to the entrance, Elena saw them. Wolves. Dozens of them, sitting in perfect formation on the lawn. Silver and gray and black, their eyes glowing in the darkness. Watching. "Your welcoming committee," Kale said dryly. They wanted to see the human who could call their king. The door opened. Dominic appeared, offered his hand to help Elena out. The moment her feet touched territory ground, every wolf's head turned toward her. And then, simultaneously, they bowed. What? They recognize you, Kale said, suddenly beside her. The bond isn't confirmed yet, but they can smell my interest, can sense that you matter to me. To lycanthropes, that's enough. Elena stared at the dozens of bowing wolves. At the magnificent estate, at Kale, who stood beside her like a dark guardian angel. This is really happening, she whispered. Yes. He offered his arm. Welcome to the Northern Territory, Elena Marsh. In 3 days, we'll know if this is your home forever, or just a temporary sanctuary. She took his arm, and together they walked through the massive doors into a world where she was no longer invisible. Where she was, impossibly, seen. But as the doors closed behind them and Elena caught sight of the figures waiting in the entrance hall, beautiful, dangerous creatures with knowing eyes, she realized something that made her heart race. Being seen by wolves meant being hunted. She just didn't know yet if they wanted to crown her, or devour her. Chapter 4. The Court of Fangs. The entrance hall was designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings soared 3 stories high, supported by timber beams that looked hewn from ancient trees. A massive chandelier of antlers and Edison bulbs cast warm light over stone floors and tapestries, depicting wolves in various stages of hunt and triumph. Everything screamed power and old money, and we were here long before you, and will remain long after. But it was the people waiting that truly took Elena's breath away. 7 figures stood in a semicircle, each radiating the same predatory grace as Kale. They were beautiful in that uncanny way, too perfect, too symmetrical. Like evolution had decided to create the apex version of human attractiveness and then added something wild underneath. My senior court, Kale said quietly, his hand settling on the small of Elena's back. That electric warmth. The alphas who govern the packs under my rule. The closest figure stepped forward, a woman who looked to be in her 40s, with silver-streaked auburn hair and eyes like chips of jade. She wore tailored slacks and a silk blouse that probably cost more than Elena's car. Lydia Blackwood, she introduced herself, her voice cultured and sharp, alpha of the Cascade Pack, and the King's second. Her gaze raked over Elena with clinical precision. So you're the human who breached the veil. I didn't mean to. Intention is irrelevant. Results matter. Lydia circled her slowly, and Elena fought the urge to step closer to Kale. Dormant born, clearly. The ward reaction confirms it. But the question is, what lineage? What blood runs through your veins that allowed you to access His Majesty's private line? That's what we'll determine, Kale said. And though his voice was mild, there was steel underneath. Elena is under my protection, Lydia. Remember that. Of course, my king. Lydia's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm simply curious. As we all are. The next to step forward was a massive man who made even Dominic look small, easily 6'5", with a shaved head and tattoos that crawled up his neck. But his smile was genuine and warm. Garrett Stone, alpha of the Mountain Pack. His handshake was gentle despite his size. Don't mind Lydia, she's suspicious of everyone. Keeps us all alive. He winked at Elena. Welcome to the territory, little human. You've got guts. I'll give you that. She doesn't know what she's walked into yet. Drawled a man who looked barely older than a college student, blonde. Pretty in a dangerous way. With eyes that shifted from blue to yellow and back. I'm Felix Dane, alpha of the Riverwood Pack, and I think this whole situation is fascinating. Fascinating, meaning catastrophic, said a dark-skinned woman with close-cropped hair and an eyebrow piercing. Nora Chen, Moonridge Pack. No offense, human, but if you're not the king's mate, you've just caused an international incident for nothing. International? Elena looked at Kale. The supernatural community is vast and political, he explained. News travels fast when a king takes a human under protection. Other territories are interested. Interested meaning concerned, said another woman. This one small and delicate-looking, with black hair to her waist and eyes like polished obsidian. Her voice carried an accent Elena couldn't place. I am Yuki Tanaka, Alpine Pack. The Eastern Territories have already sent inquiries. They want to know if you're a threat. How could I possibly be a threat? I'm a medical transcriptionist. Who called a king across dimensional barriers? Interrupted the sixth figure, a man who looked to be in his 60s, with silver hair and a face carved from granite. Alistair Gray, Ironwood Pack. I've been alive for 243 years, girl. In that time, I've seen 3 humans breach the veil. All 3 were powerful witches who knew exactly what they were doing. You claim ignorance. That makes you either a liar or something unprecedented. Elena felt her temper flare. I'm not a liar. Peace, Alistair. The 7th and final figure spoke, and his voice was like honey over gravel. He was younger than the others, maybe early 30s in appearance, with warm brown skin and eyes that held genuine kindness. I'm Isaiah Banks, Summerwood Pack, and I, for one, am willing to give you the benefit of the doubt. He smiled at Elena. Anyone who can make the king abandon protocol and race to a human hospital at 3 in the morning is worth getting to know. Thank you, Elena said quietly. Enough introductions. Kale's hand pressed more firmly against her back. Elena has been through surgery and travel. She needs rest. We'll convene tomorrow for testing. Until then, my orders stand. She is to be treated as an honored guest and potential queen. Anyone who forgets that will answer to me personally. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Understood, my king, Lydia said, and the others echoed her. Kale guided Elena toward a grand staircase. Vera appeared from a side corridor, falling into step beside them. Your quarters are prepared, my king. Miss Marsh's rooms are adjacent, as requested. Adjacent? Elena whispered as they climbed. Shouldn't I be in a guest wing or something? You're under my personal protection. That means you stay where I can reach you quickly. Kale's jaw was tight. The court is loyal, but they're also territorial and suspicious. Until the bond is confirmed or denied, you don't leave my sight. They reached the 3rd floor, walking down a hallway lined with more tapestries and oil paintings of wolves and forests and battles. Kale stopped at a door, opened it. The suite beyond was stunning. A 4-poster bed dominated the space, dressed in soft grays and deep blues. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the forest, where Elena could see more wolves patrolling. A sitting area with a fireplace, a bathroom that looked like something from a spa, and a walk-in closet that, you brought my entire wardrobe, Elena said, staring at the familiar clothes hanging beside dozens of new pieces. I said your belongings were collected. Your landlord has been compensated for early lease termination. Your job has been informed you're taking medical leave. Kale leaned against the doorframe. If the bond is false, you can return to your old life. But if it's real, Elena, you'll need to understand that everything changes. You're very certain this might be real. My wolf is certain, and he's rarely wrong about things that matter. Kale straightened. Rest. Vera will wake you for breakfast. Tomorrow, we begin testing blood work, genealogy research, magical sensitivity assessments. We need to understand what you are before the blood moon rises. And if we don't figure it out in time, his eyes flashed silver, then we'll find out the hard way whether you're mine or not. He left, closing the door softly behind him. Elena stood in the middle of the unfamiliar luxury, her heart pounding. Through the windows, she could see the forest stretching endlessly, and somewhere out there, dozens of wolves prowled, protecting her or guarding her, she wasn't sure which. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Come in. Vera entered, carrying a tray. Tea and sandwiches. You barely ate at the hospital, and the king would have my hide if you collapsed from hunger. Does he always micromanage like this? Only with things that matter. Vera set the tray on the coffee table. I've known Kale Thornwood since he was 23 years old and newly crowned after his father's death. I've seen him bury friends, negotiate with hostile packs, fight challenges to his authority. I've never seen him protective like this. Elena sank onto the couch. What if I'm not his mate? What if I'm just some weird magical anomaly? Then you go back to your human life. Probably a lot wealthier and definitely more interesting. Vera poured tea. But Elena, I don't think that's what happens. Why? Because when the king looks at you, his eyes go silver. That only happens when the wolf is close to the surface. And Kale's wolf is ancient and powerful, and has been dormant for decades. Something about you woke it up. Elena wrapped her hands around the warm teacup. I'm scared. Good, you should be. Becoming a Lycan queen isn't a fairy tale. It's dangerous and political and demanding. You'd be responsible for thousands of lives, negotiating with other territories, dealing with challenges and intrigue. Vera's expression softened. But you'd also never be invisible again. You'd be cherished and protected and seen every single day for the rest of your very long life. How long? Mates of bonded lycanthropes live as long as their partners. If you're Kale's mate, you'd stop aging within a year of the bond completing. You'd live for centuries. That's impossible. So are werewolves, yet here we are. Vera stood. Eat, rest. Tomorrow is going to be intense. The court will be watching every test, every reaction. They need to believe you're worthy of their king. After Vera left, Elena ate mechanically, her mind spinning. She should have been terrified. Should have demanded to leave immediately. But instead, she found herself at the window, looking out at the dark forest and the silver shapes moving through it, and thinking about amber eyes that turned silver when they looked at her. Thinking about a voice that had promised I'm coming when she'd been bleeding and alone. Thinking about being seen for the first time in her forgettable life. Elena pressed her palm against the cold glass and whispered to her reflection, "What am I?" And somewhere in the forest below, a massive silver wolf lifted its head, as if it had heard her question and was waiting, just as desperately, for the answer. If you're captivated by Elena's journey from invisible to invaluable, subscribe now, because stories about finding your power in the most unexpected places deserve to be shared with others who believe transformation is possible. Chapter 5. Blood Speaks. Elena woke to the sound of howling, not the mournful cry of lonely wolves, but something orchestral, dozens of voices rising and falling in harmony. A song that made her bones vibrate and her heart race. It was still dark outside, pre-dawn gray filtering through the massive windows. She stumbled out of bed, drawn to the glass. The forest was alive with them. Wolves of every size and color, their muzzles lifted to the sky, singing to the fading moon. And there, at the center of the gathering, was the largest, a massive silver wolf, with eyes that glowed amber even in the darkness. Kale, as if sensing her watching, his head turned. Even from 3 stories up, Elena felt the weight of that gaze. Then, as suddenly as it began, the howling stopped. The wolves dispersed into the trees like smoke, leaving only the silver wolf standing alone. He stared at her window for a long moment before turning and loping into the forest. A knock at her door made Elena jump. "Miss Marsh?" Vera's voice. "The king requests your presence for breakfast in 20 minutes. Elena opened the door to find Vera holding a tailored outfit, charcoal slacks, a cream silk blouse, and a fitted blazer that looked both professional and elegant. "What was the howling about?" Elena asked, as Vera set the clothes on the bed. "Morning song. The pack greets the day together, reinforces their bonds." Vera's expression was unreadable. "The king led it today, which is unusual. He doesn't often join the morning songs anymore." "Why not?" "Because leading the song is traditionally done by mated pairs. The alpha and his mate sing together, and the pack responds." Vera paused. "Kale has led alone since his father died 40 years ago, until this morning. But I wasn't singing." "No. But you were there. Your presence was enough." Vera gestured to the bathroom. "Shower quickly. The court will be at breakfast, and first impressions matter." The dining room was somehow more intimidating than the entrance hall. A massive table of dark wood stretched nearly 20 feet, surrounded by high-backed chairs. The senior court was already seated, along with several faces Elena didn't recognize. At the head of the table sat Kale, now in human form, wearing black slacks and a charcoal sweater that made his amber eyes even more striking. He stood when she entered. "Elena, come, sit beside me." The chair to his right, the queen's chair, Elena realized with a jolt was empty. Every eye in the room tracked her as she walked to it, her heart hammering. Kale held the chair for her, a gesture so old-fashioned and courtly that it made several of the younger wolves smile. "Sleep well?" he asked as he resumed his seat. "Until the howling. Apologies. Morning song is tradition. I should have warned you." "It was beautiful," Elena admitted. "Terrifying, but beautiful." Lydia Blackwood, seated across from Elena, made a sound that might have been approval or dismissal. "Most humans find our rituals disturbing." "Elena isn't most humans," Kale said quietly, and the table fell silent. Breakfast was served by staff who moved with the same predatory grace, more lycanthropes, Elena realized. The food was excellent, but she could barely taste it under the weight of so many watchful stares. "So," Felix Dane said cheerfully, breaking the tension. "Today's the big day. Blood tests and magical assessments." "You nervous, Elena?" "Terrified." "Good answer." Felix grinned. "Liars say they're fine. The truthful ones admit fear. The tests are non-invasive," Isaiah Banks assured her. "Mostly blood work and genealogical research. We'll map your ancestry, check for dormant magical markers, assess your sensitivity to various supernatural frequencies. And if you find nothing?" Elena asked. "Then we look deeper," Lydia said. "Because something allowed you to breach the veil. Power like that doesn't come from nowhere." "Or," Alistair Gray interjected, his voice gravelly, "she's a plant, sent by a rival territory to infiltrate the king's court." Kale's fork hit his plate with a sharp clink. "Alistair, that's enough." "Is it?" "Forgive me, my king, but this is unprecedented. A human who conveniently calls your private line, plays the damsel in distress, and now sits in the queen's chair 3 days later? It's too convenient." I didn't play anything," Elena said, her voice shaking with anger. "I was dying. I misdialed a number trying to reach someone who actually gave a damn. Language suggesting you had no one," Alistair continued as if she hadn't spoken, "making the king feel protective. Classic manipulation." Kale's hand slammed down on the table hard enough to crack the wood. The entire room froze. "One more word," Kale said softly, dangerously, "and you'll remember why I'm king and you're not." His eyes were completely silver now, the wolf staring out from behind them. The temperature dropped so sharply that Elena could see her breath. Alistair bowed his head immediately. "My apologies, my king. I overspoke. You questioned my judgment and insulted my guest. When Elena is proven to be my mate, you'll remember this moment and regret it." Kale turned to Elena, and his expression softened. "Finish your breakfast. Alistair's paranoia doesn't deserve your consideration." But Elena's appetite was gone. She pushed her plate away. "If we're doing tests, let's just get them over with." The medical wing was hidden in the estate's eastern corridor, a facility that would have impressed any human hospital. Dr. Soren Voss, the pack physician, was a tall, thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and the detached manner of someone who'd seen everything. "Miss Marsh, please, sit." He gestured to an examination chair. "This will take approximately 2 hours. I'll need blood samples, a cheek swab for DNA analysis, and your participation in several magical sensitivity tests." The court filed in, taking positions along the walls. Watching. Judging. Elena tried to ignore them, as Dr. Voss drew vial after vial of blood. "You have excellent veins," he murmured. "Medical background?" "I transcribed medical reports, picked up some knowledge." "Fascinating." He labeled the vials with quick efficiency. "Now, let's begin with basic magical sensitivity. I'm going to place various objects near you. I need you to tell me what you feel. If anything." He started with a smooth river stone. Elena felt nothing, then a crystal that made her fingertips tingle slightly, then a small vial of silver liquid that made her gasp and pull back. It felt like ice and fire simultaneously. "Interesting," Dr. Voss murmured, making notes. "Strong reaction to moon water. That suggests lunar sensitivity, common in dormant born with Lycan ancestry." "Lycan ancestry?" Elena's head snapped up. "One possibility. We'll know more once the blood work is complete." He produced a small knife. "This may be uncomfortable. I need to make a small incision on your palm to test healing speed. Healing speed? Dormant born with strong bloodlines heal faster than normal humans. Not as fast as active lycanthropes, but noticeably quicker. He made a small cut across her palm. Elena hissed at the sting. Kale was suddenly beside her, his hand gripping her shoulder. She hadn't even seen him move. How long? He demanded. We wait and observe. Dr. Voss set a timer. Normal human healing would show no change in 5 minutes. Dormant born will show accelerated clotting and initial closure. They watched in silence. Elena was acutely aware of Kale's hand on her shoulder, his thumb tracing small circles against her collarbone, comforting her without even realizing it. At 4 minutes, the bleeding stopped. At 5 minutes, the wound had begun to close, not completely, but far faster than normal. Dr. Voss made a triumphant sound. Definitely dormant born. The question is how strong the bloodline is. How long for the DNA results? Lydia asked from her position against the wall. 48 hours for basic ancestry. 72 for detailed magical markers. Dr. Voss turned to Elena. One more test, the most important one. He produced a small silver box, opened it carefully. Inside was a single white feather that seemed to glow with its own light. This is a phoenix feather, harvested ethically from a willing donor. It reacts to strong magical signatures, and most relevantly to mate bonds. He looked at Kale. Your Majesty, I'll need you to hold it first. Kale took the feather. It flared bright amber, the same color as his eyes. Now, Miss Marsh, take it from the king's hand. Don't take it from me, physical contact matters. Elena reached out, her hand trembling. The moment her fingers brushed Kale's, the feather exploded into brilliant silver-gold light that filled the entire room. The court gasped. The light intensified, became almost painful to look at. Elena felt something surge through her, like lightning and honey and home all at once. It was overwhelming, terrifying, right. Then it faded, leaving the feather a soft, pulsing glow in her palm. Silence. Dr. Voss removed his glasses, cleaned them, replaced them. Well, that's definitive. What does it mean? Elena whispered. It means, Lydia said slowly, and for the first time, there was wonder in her voice, that the mate bond is real. The feather only reacts that strongly to true mates. I've seen this test performed dozens of times. I've never seen a reaction that powerful. Kale's hand tightened on Elena's shoulder. Are you certain? Completely. The blood moon will complete the bond in 2 days, but the foundation is there. She's your mate, my king. Dr. Voss smiled. Congratulations. The territory finally has its queen. Elena stared at the glowing feather in her hand, her mind spinning. This was real. The bond was real. In 2 days, she would be bound to Kale Thornwood for centuries, transformed from invisible medical transcriptionist to Lycan Queen. I need air, she said suddenly, standing. The room tilted. Kale caught her before she fell. Easy. The revelation is overwhelming. I can't. I need. She broke free, stumbled toward the door. The court parted as she ran. Elena made it to a courtyard before her legs gave out. She sank onto a stone bench, gasping for air that wouldn't come. This was too much. Too fast. 3 days ago, she'd been bleeding and forgotten. Now she was a queen. Breathe, Elena. She looked up through tears to find Isaiah standing there, his expression gentle. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm nobody. I can't be a queen. I can't rule thousands of wolves. I can't. You already did, Isaiah interrupted softly. The moment you called for help, instead of giving up. The moment you walked into that dining room and faced Alistair's accusations without backing down. You've been surviving invisibility your whole life, Elena. That takes more strength than you know. But I don't know anything about your world. You'll learn. We'll teach you. He sat beside her. And you won't be alone. You'll have Kale, who would die before letting harm come to you. You'll have the court, who will come to respect you once they see your strength. You'll have the entire pack, who are already half in love with you just for making their king smile. He doesn't smile. He does now. That's the point. Isaiah squeezed her shoulder. The blood moon rises in 2 days. Until then, you have time to adjust, to learn, to decide if this life is worth the cost. But Elena? I've been alive for 93 years. I've seen a lot of people run from their destiny. I've never seen it end well. What if I'm not strong enough? Then you'll become strong enough. He stood, offered his hand. Come on. The king is probably tearing the estate apart looking for you. Let's prevent property damage. Elena let him pull her to her feet. As they walked back toward the medical wing, she caught sight of something that made her stop. Through a window, she could see Kale. He was standing alone in a corridor, his forehead pressed against the wall, his hands clenched into fists. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders. He looked afraid. The mighty Lycan King looked absolutely terrified. He's scared too, Elena whispered. Of course he is. He's lived alone for decades, convinced he'd never find his mate. Now fate drops you in his lap with 48 hours to prepare for a bond that will change everything. Isaiah smiled sadly. Love is terrifying, Elena, especially when it means forever. Elena watched Kale for another moment. Then she straightened her spine, wiped her tears, and walked back into the medical wing. When Kale saw her, the relief on his face was so raw it made her chest ache. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I panicked. You're entitled to panic. This is. He ran a hand through his hair. This is a lot. Yes. She took a breath. But I'm not running. Not yet. I want to understand what this means. What I'm becoming. The smile he gave her was worth every moment of fear. Then let's find out together, he said, and offered his hand. Elena took it, feeling that electric heat, that rightness. And somewhere in the forest beyond, the pack began to howl a song of celebration that the king had finally found his queen, even if she didn't quite believe it yet. Chapter 6, Shadows and Silver. The library was Elena's sanctuary for the next 36 hours. It occupied the entire west wing of the estate. 3 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, rolling ladders, and the scent of old paper and leather. Kale had given her free access, and she'd taken full advantage, devouring everything she could find about lycanthrope culture, history, and the mate bond. What she learned both fascinated and terrified her. Mate bonds were sacred, unbreakable once completed. When the blood moon rose tomorrow night, if she and Kale were truly fated, the bond would solidify. She'd gain enhanced healing, extended lifespan, and an empathic connection to Kale, able to feel his emotions, sense his location, know when he was in danger. In return, she'd become queen, responsible for pack welfare, territorial disputes, and politics that spanned centuries, expected to lead beside Kale, make decisions that affected thousands of lives, and bear the weight of a crown she'd never asked for. The books didn't sugarcoat it. Being a Lycan queen was dangerous. Assassination attempts were common. Rival territories tested new queens constantly, and if she proved weak, challenges to Kale's rule would follow. Light reading? Elena looked up to find Felix lounging against a bookshelf, his boyish face amused. Research. If I'm going to be queen, I should probably know what that means. Fair. He dropped into the chair across from her. Finding anything useful in those dusty tomes? I'm finding out that I'm wildly unprepared for this. Everyone feels that way at first. Felix picked up one of her books, flipped through it. This one's ancient, written by Queen Isolde Blackwood in the 1600s. She was human-born too, you know. Really? Mated to King Aldrich of the Western Territories. She was a healer, completely ordinary, until she stumbled into pack lands during a hunt. Felix smiled at the memory. According to pack lore, Aldrich took one look at her and shifted back to human form, stark naked in front of his entire court, just to introduce himself properly. Caused a scandal that lasted decades. Despite herself, Elena laughed. What happened to her? What happened to her? She became one of the greatest queens in Lycan history. Negotiated the Treaty of Crimson Falls, established the Healer's Code, and ruled for 217 years before she and Aldrich passed together. Felix's expression turned serious. The point is, she was ordinary, until she wasn't. The bond changes you, Elena, makes you stronger, faster, more than human. You'll be ready for what's coming. And if I'm not, then the rest of us will help you. He stood, stretched. The court might seem suspicious, but we're loyal to our king. If you're his mate, and the phoenix feather says you are, then you're ours too. We'll protect you, guide you, and probably annoy the hell out of you with unsolicited advice. Thank you, Felix. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you meet the Eastern delegation. Elena's stomach dropped. What? Oh, did no one mention? The Eastern territories requested an audience. They arrive tonight. His grin turned wicked. They want to verify that you're legitimate and not some kind of elaborate hoax. Should be fun. He left before Elena could respond. She was still processing this information when Kale appeared in the library entrance. He'd clearly come from a run. His hair was windswept, and he wore running clothes that did nothing to hide the predatory grace of his build. "You've been hiding in here for 12 hours, he said without preamble. "I've been learning. There's a difference. Come with me." He extended his hand. "You need a break from books." Felix said the Eastern delegation is coming. "Tonight, yes. Which means you need to clear your head before dealing with politics." His expression softened. "Please, Elena. Let me show you something." She couldn't refuse him. Not when he looked at her like that, like she was precious and he was afraid she might disappear. Elena took his hand. He led her deep into the forest, moving along paths only he could see. The late afternoon sun filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, and the air smelled of pine and earth and something wild. "Where are we going?" "You'll see." They walked for 20 minutes before emerging into a clearing. Elena gasped. A natural hot spring steamed in the center, surrounded by smooth stones and wildflowers that shouldn't be blooming in October. The water glowed faintly blue, and the air thrummed with that same energy she'd felt crossing the ward line. "The Queen's Spring," Kale said quietly. "It's been here for centuries. My mother used to come here when my father's court overwhelmed her." "Your mother was human?" "Half human. Her father was Lycan, her mother human. She understood what it meant to exist between two worlds." He moved to the water's edge, trailed his fingers through it. "She died when I was 17, protecting the pack from hunters who discovered our location. I'm sorry. She was brave, fierce, everything a queen should be." He turned to face Elena. "I've been thinking about what Isaiah said, that I'm scared." "He's right." Elena moved closer. "Of what?" "Of failing you. Of binding you to me and then watching you realize the cost is too high. Of you deciding that invisibility was better than this crown of thorns." His voice dropped. "Of you looking at the monster under my skin and running. I've seen your wolf, Kale. In the forest, leading the morning song. You're not a monster. You haven't seen what I become in battle. What I've done to protect this territory." His eyes flashed silver. "I've killed, Elena. Dozens. Hundreds over the centuries. I've torn apart anyone who threatened my pack, and I'd do it again without hesitation. That's what I am, violence wrapped in civilization, barely contained." Elena stepped close enough to feel his heat. "And I'm invisible, wrapped in forgettable, barely noticed. We're both pretending to be something we're not, Kale. The difference is, you're afraid I'll see the real you. I'm afraid you already have. And you'll realize I'm not worth the trouble." His hand came up, cupped her cheek. "You're worth everything." "I'm nobody. Stop saying that." His thumb traced her lower lip. "You're a woman who survived being overlooked and still had the courage to call for help. You're someone who walked into a room full of predators and didn't back down. You're mine, Elena Marsh. The universe decided that centuries ago. We're just finally catching up. The blood moon is tomorrow night. I know. If the bond completes, everything changes. I know. I'm terrified," she whispered. "So am I." He leaned down, rested his forehead against hers. "But I'm more terrified of losing you. Of this being some cosmic mistake and watching you walk away. I don't want to walk away." The words surprised her as much as him, but they were true. Despite everything, the danger, the responsibility, the impossible nature of it all, she didn't want to leave. Didn't want to go back to her invisible life. "Then stay," Kale breathed. Let the bond complete. Become what you were always meant to be. A queen? My queen. He kissed her, then gentle at first, testing, then deeper when she responded. His hands slid into her hair, and she pressed closer, feeling the heat of him, the barely contained power. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were completely silver. Tomorrow night, he said roughly. When the blood moon rises, meet me here. At this spring, we'll let fate decide, and if nothing happens, then we'll know I was wrong, and you're free to choose your own path. But his expression said he knew that wouldn't happen. The bond was real. They both felt it. A howl echoed through the forest, Vera's signal that they were needed back at the estate. The delegation, Kale said grimly. They're early. The Eastern delegation consisted of 5 lycanthropes who radiated power and barely concealed hostility. Their leader was a woman named Katerina Volkov, tall, blonde, beautiful in a cold, sharp way. Her eyes were ice blue, and when she looked at Elena, it was with open contempt. So, this is the human who claims to be your mate, Katerina said, circling Elena like a predator. She's underwhelming. They were in the formal receiving room, with Kale's court arranged behind him in a show of strength. Elena stood at Kale's right hand, wearing one of the designer outfits, a deep blue dress that Vera had chosen, and trying not to show her fear. Elena is my mate, Kale said coldly. The phoenix feather confirmed it. Tests can be faked. Bonds can be manufactured with the right magic. Katerina stopped in front of Elena. I want to see proof. The blood moon rises tomorrow. I want proof now. Katerina's hand shot out, grabbed Elena's wrist. Her grip was crushing. If she's truly your mate, King Thornwood, then hurting her should provoke your wolf. Let's test that theory. She squeezed harder. Elena gasped in pain. Kale moved faster than sight. One moment he was standing beside her, the next he had Katerina by the throat, lifted off the ground, his eyes blazing silver and his canines descended. Touch her again, he snarled, and I'll paint these walls with your blood. The room exploded into chaos. Katerina's delegation shifted partially, their eyes glowing. Kale's court responded in kind, and suddenly Elena was surrounded by predators on the verge of violence. Enough! Lydia's voice cracked like a whip. We are civilized beings. We do not brawl in receiving rooms like common animals. Kale slowly lowered Katerina, but didn't release her throat. You came to my territory. You insulted my mate. Explain why I shouldn't remove you permanently. Because, Katerina gasped, the Eastern territories needed to know if the bond was real. Your reaction confirms it. No unbonded male would risk war over a human's bruised wrist. Kale released her, and she stumbled backward, rubbing her throat. Satisfied? His voice was lethal. Yes. Katerina straightened her clothes, and impossibly, she smiled. The Eastern territories recognize Elena Marsh as your true mate and future queen. We'll send gifts for the bonding ceremony. Congratulations, King Thornwood. May your reign be long and your heirs strong. She and her delegation left without another word. The moment they were gone, Kale turned to Elena. Let me see. She extended her wrist. Dark bruises were already forming where Katerina had gripped her. Kale's jaw clenched. I should have killed her. No. She got what she wanted, confirmation the bond is real. Elena touched his face, drew his gaze to hers. I'm okay. You shouldn't have to endure this. Politics, threats, tests. I endured being invisible for 26 years. I think I can handle being too visible for a change. She smiled. Besides, watching you defend me was impressive. His expression shifted. Impressive? Terrifying. But also kind of hot. That surprised a laugh out of him. You're remarkable, Elena Marsh. Not yet. But maybe tomorrow night, I will be. Tomorrow night, the blood moon, the bonding, the moment everything would change forever. Elena looked around at the court at Lydia's grudging respect. Felix's grin, Isaiah's warm smile, even Alistair's slight nod of approval. These would be her people. This would be her life. And the man looking at her like she was his entire world would be hers, bound for centuries. I'm ready, she whispered. Kale's smile was fierce and beautiful. Then let's make you a queen. Chapter 7. The blood moon rises. The day of the blood moon dawned cold and clear. Elena woke to find her room filled with people, Vera, Sienna, and 3 women she didn't recognize, all carrying garments and boxes and an energy that bordered on frantic. What's happening? Preparation, Vera said briskly. The bonding ceremony is tonight. You need to look like a queen. I thought it was just the bond completing, not a whole ceremony. The bond will complete when the moon rises, yes, but the pack needs to witness it, to accept you formally as their queen. Vera gestured to the women. This is Marina, Celeste, and Dove. They're our ceremonial attendants. They'll help you prepare. The next 8 hours were a blur of activity that left Elena exhausted and overwhelmed. Marina washed her hair with water from the queen's spring, infused with herbs that smelled of moonflower and sage. Celeste painted intricate designs on her arms and shoulders, ancient symbols that she explained were for protection, strength, and fertility. Dove worked on her dress, a creation of silver silk that seemed to shimmer with its own light. These symbols, Elena said, watching Celeste's careful brushwork. What do they mean? This one is for the moon's blessing. This for the pack's acceptance. This for the mate bond itself, 2 souls intertwining. Celeste's hand was steady. They're traditional for bonding ceremonies. Every queen has worn them. Even human-born queens. Especially human-born queens. The symbols help bridge the gap between human and Lycan, make the transformation easier. Celeste met her eyes. It will hurt, Elena, when the bond completes. Your body will change not into a wolf, but into something more than human. Enhanced healing, extended life, the ability to sense pack bonds. It's beautiful, but it's not gentle. How long does it last? The pain? Minutes, maybe an hour at most. Then you'll be reborn as queen. Celeste smiled. And you'll never be invisible again. By late afternoon, Elena barely recognized herself in the mirror. The dress fit like it had been designed for her body, specifically off-shoulder, flowing, with silver embroidery that caught the light. Her hair fell in waves down her back, woven with tiny silver beads. The symbols on her skin seemed to glow faintly in the dimming light. She looked like something from a fairy tale. Powerful, ethereal, visible. The king will lose his mind when he sees you, Vera said with satisfaction. Come, the court is gathering. It's time. The ceremony would take place at the queen's spring, deep in the forest where Kale had first kissed her. The pack had spent the day preparing torches lined the path, and the clearing had been transformed with flowers and candles and an altar of smooth stones. As Elena walked the torchlit path, wolves emerged from the forest on either side. Dozens of them, sitting in perfect silence, their eyes glowing in the gathering darkness. Watching, waiting. Her honor guard Vera, Dominic, Felix, Isaiah, and even Alistair walked with her, a show of the court's acceptance. The clearing came into view, and Elena's breath caught. Hundreds of wolves surrounded the spring, forming a massive circle. The senior court stood near the altar in human form, dressed in formal attire, and there, beside the glowing water, stood Kale. He wore all black slacks, a shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, no jacket, simple and devastating. His eyes found hers across the clearing, and they flashed silver. The wolves began to howl not the morning song, but something deeper, older. A song of recognition and celebration. Elena walked forward, her heart hammering. When she reached Kale, he took her hands, and that electric heat flared between them. You're beautiful, he breathed, like the moon itself decided to take human form. You clean up pretty well yourself. That earned her a smile that made her knees weak. Lydia stepped forward, her voice carrying across the clearing. We gather under the blood moon to witness the completion of a sacred bond. The moon has chosen. The king has claimed. The question now is, does the queen accept? All eyes turned to Elena. This was it. Her last chance to walk away, to return to her human life, to choose invisibility over danger. She thought about her basement office, her studio apartment, her family who only called when they needed something, her ex-boyfriend who'd compared her to a couch. Then she looked at Kale, at the man who'd raced to her side at 3 a.m., who'd defended her against his own court, who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking for centuries. "I accept," Elena said clearly. "I choose this bond. I choose this pack. I choose him." The howling intensified, became almost deafening. Kale pulled her closer. "When the moon rises, the bond will complete. Stay with me, Elena. No matter how much it hurts, stay with me." "I will." They turned to face the eastern horizon, where the sky was darkening to indigo. The first stars were appearing, and there, just cresting the tree line, was the moon. But it wasn't the silvery white of a normal full moon. It was deep crimson, like it had been dipped in blood. The blood moon. As its light touched the clearing, Elena felt something shift in the air. A thrumming power that made every hair on her body stand on end. Kale's hand tightened on hers. "It's beginning." The crimson moonlight fell across them like a physical thing. Elena gasped, as heat flooded her body, not painful yet, but intense. She could feel something forming between her and Kale, a golden thread that seemed to pulse with life. "What is that?" she whispered. "The bond, visible during the completion." His voice was strained. "Can you feel me?" She could. Suddenly, she could feel his emotions, his love, his fear, his desperate hope. It was overwhelming, beautiful, terrifying. "Yes, I feel you." "Then hold on." The pain hit like lightning. Elena screamed, as her body began to change. It felt like every cell was being rewritten, every nerve ending set on fire. She could feel her bones strengthening, her senses sharpening, her very DNA restructuring itself. Kale caught her when her legs gave out, lowering them both to the ground. He held her through the agony, his voice a constant whisper in her ear. "Stay with me. You're strong enough. Stay with me, Elena." The golden thread between them grew brighter, thicker. Elena could see it now, even with her eyes closed, a bond that connected her heart to his, unbreakable and eternal. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pain stopped. Elena opened her eyes. Everything was different. She could see more colors were more vivid, details sharper. She could hear the heartbeat of every wolf in the clearing, could smell the pine and earth, and the unique scent of each individual pack member. And she could feel them hundreds of golden threads connecting her to every wolf present, with the brightest, strongest thread leading straight to Kale. "Elena?" Kale's voice was rough with emotion. "Are you?" She kissed him. The clearing erupted in howls of celebration. When they finally broke apart, Elena realized her hands were glowing faintly with silver light. "What's happening to me?" "You're becoming what you were always meant to be." Kale helped her stand, and she was surprised by how easy it was. Her body felt stronger, lighter, more. "How do you feel?" "Like I could run for miles, like I could fight armies, like I'm finally, completely awake." She looked at the assembled pack, and they bowed as one. "This is real. This is real." Kale turned her to face the pack, his arm around her waist. "The bond is complete. I present to you Elena Marsh Thornwood, Queen of the Northern Territories." The howling shook the trees. Lydia approached, carrying a silver circlet embedded with moonstones. "By the ancient laws and the moon's blessing, I crown you, Queen." She placed the circlet on Elena's head. The moment it touched her, Elena felt a surge of power, the collective strength of every pack member flowing through the bond. She was no longer invisible. She was queen. The celebration lasted hours. Wolves shifted back to human form, bringing food and drink and stories. Elena met dozens of pack members who welcomed her with genuine warmth. Even Alistair approached, offering a gruff congratulation and admitting he'd been wrong to doubt her. But as midnight approached, Kale took her hand. "Come with me." He led her away from the celebration, back to the Queen's spring. The crimson moon reflected in the glowing water, and they were finally, blessedly alone. "How do you feel?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "Overwhelmed, powerful, terrified, complete." She looked up at him. "I can feel you, Kale. Your emotions. It's like you're inside my head, and you're in mine. I can feel your fear, your excitement, your love." He stopped. "You love me." It wasn't a question. He could feel it through the bond. Yes, Elena admitted. I think I started falling the moment you promised you were coming. When you made me visible, I loved you the moment I heard your voice on that phone. My wolf knew before I did. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You're mine now, Elena. For centuries. Can you live with that? Can you live with a queen who still doesn't know what she's doing? I'll teach you. We'll figure it out together. His smile was fierce. Besides, you're stronger than you think. You survived invisibility. You'll survive visibility too. What happens now? Now? He pulled back slightly, his expression turning serious. Now the real work begins. Other territories will test you. There will be challenges, politics, dangers. Being queen isn't easy, Elena. Good. She touched the circlet on her head, felt the weight of it. I've been invisible for 26 years. I think I can handle being important for the next few centuries. Kale laughed, a real, genuine laugh that made something in Elena's chest warm. Through their bond, she felt his joy, his relief, his absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. And for the first time in her entire life, Elena Marsh, now Elena Marsh Thornwood, Queen of the Northern Territories, felt the same certainty. She was home. She was seen. She was loved. And when morning came, she would begin learning what it truly meant to wear a crown. But tonight, under the blood moon with her mate's arms around her, Elena simply existed in the moment. Visible, valued, victorious. The invisible girl had become an immortal queen, and her story was just beginning. Chapter 8. The Price of Crowns. Elena woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows. For a moment, she panicked. This wasn't her room. Then memory flooded back. The bonding ceremony, the blood moon, becoming queen. And she wasn't in her guest suite anymore. She was in Kale's rooms, their rooms now. The bed beside her was empty, but she could feel him through the bond downstairs, tense, discussing something serious. The emotional connection was still strange, like having a second heartbeat that wasn't quite her own. Elena sat up and immediately noticed the differences in her body. Everything felt sharper, stronger. She could hear conversations 3 floors below, could smell coffee brewing in the kitchen and the pine forest beyond the walls, could sense the individual heartbeats of at least 20 wolves patrolling the grounds. This is my life now. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. My queen? Vera's voice. May I enter? My queen would take some getting used to. Yes, come in. Vera entered carrying a breakfast tray and another elegant outfit, this time tailored pants and a silk blouse in deep burgundy. Good morning. The king thought you might be hungry. The transformation burns a lot of energy. Where is he? Emergency court meeting. The Western Territories sent a message overnight. Vera's expression was carefully neutral. Nothing urgent, but political. He didn't want to wake you. Elena took the coffee gratefully, her enhanced senses making the aroma almost overwhelming. What kind of message? A challenge. The word hung in the air like a blade. What kind of challenge? Vera sat on the edge of the bed, her usual formality softening. When a new queen is crowned, especially a human-born queen, it's tradition for other territories to test her, to ensure she's worthy of her position. The Western Alpha has invoked the trial of 3, which is 3 tests over the next month. Intelligence, strength, and heart. Pass all 3, and your position is unquestioned. Fail even 1, and it opens challenges to the king's judgment. Vera's hand found Elena's. It's designed to be difficult, Elena. Queens have failed before. What happens if I fail? Nothing happens to you directly, but Kale's authority would be questioned. Other alphas might challenge his right to rule. The territory could fracture. Vera squeezed her hand. No pressure. Elena laughed, slightly hysterical. I've been queen for 12 hours, which is why the Western Alpha chose now to issue the challenge. He wants to catch you unprepared. Vera's eyes flashed yellow. But you're not unprepared. You have the entire court behind you. We'll train you, guide you, make sure you're ready. When is the first test? 1 week. They're sending a delegation to observe. The test will be here, on our territory. Vera stood, moved to lay out the clothes. Get dressed. The king wants you at the court meeting. It's time you start learning how we govern. The council chamber was a circular room on the second floor, dominated by a round table where the senior court Saturday when Elena entered. All conversation stopped. Kale was at the head of the table, his expression thunderous. But the moment he saw her, it softened. She felt his relief through the bond he'd been worried she'd wake alone and frightened. "Elena, come, sit." He gestured to the empty chair at his right hand. As she crossed to him, she noticed the papers scattered across the table. Maps, messages written in elegant script, and a formal letter bearing a wax seal she didn't recognize. "The Western Territories," Lydia explained, tracking Elena's gaze. "Alpha Donovan Sterling has formally challenged you to the trial of 3. It's political theater, but we're obligated to accept," Vera explained. 3 tests, 1 month, high stakes. Elena sat, and Kale's hand immediately found hers under the table. The touch steadied her. "What are the tests?" "They're chosen by the challenging territory," Alistair said, grimly. "We won't know until the day of each trial. But traditionally, the first tests intelligence and political acumen, the second tests physical capability or courage, the third tests character, usually a moral dilemma or sacrifice. Queens have died in these trials," Nora added bluntly. "Donovan Sterling isn't known for his mercy. He'll make them as brutal as tradition allows." "Why?" Elena looked around the table. "Why would he want to hurt me?" "We've never met." "Because you're human-born and newly bonded," Felix said. "It makes us look weak to other territories. If Donovan can prove you're unworthy, it damages Kale's reputation and opens opportunities for the Western Territories to expand their influence." "Politics," Kale said darkly. "Endless, tiresome politics." "So what do we do?" Elena asked. "We train you." Isaiah's warm voice cut through the tension. "Starting today, combat training, political education, pack dynamics. 1 week isn't much time, but it's enough to give you a foundation." "I don't know how to fight." "You don't need to be a warrior," Sienna interrupted. She'd been silent until now, watching Elena with those unsettling amber eyes. "You need to be smart, adaptable, and brave. The trials test queens, not soldiers. Different skill set. Sienna will handle physical training," Kale said. "Lydia will teach you political strategy. Isaiah will cover pack dynamics and territory law. Felix will run scenarios with you, historical trials, famous challenges, how other queens succeeded or failed." "And me?" Elena asked. "What do I do besides try not to die?" "You survive," Kale said softly. "You prove that my wolf didn't make a mistake when it chose you, and you show every territory from here to the East Coast that human-born doesn't mean weak." Through the bond, Elena felt his absolute faith in her. It should have been comforting. Instead, it was terrifying. What if she failed? What if his faith was misplaced? "When do we start?" she asked. "Now." Sienna stood. "Training room. Let's see what you're working with." The training room was in the basement, a massive space with padded floors, weapons racks, and equipment Elena didn't recognize. Sienna moved to the center, her movements liquid and predatory. "The second trial usually involves combat or physical challenge," she explained. "You won't be expected to fight like a warrior, but you need to defend yourself. Show me your stance." Elena had never been in a fight in her life. She stood awkwardly, fists raised the way she'd seen in movies. Sienna's expression didn't change. "That's what I thought. Okay, new plan. Forget everything you think you know about fighting." For the next 3 hours, Sienna drilled her relentlessly. Not on offense, but on defense, how to read an opponent's body language, how to use leverage instead of strength, how to turn an attacker's momentum against them. "You're never going to overpower a lycanthrope," Sienna said, demonstrating a joint lock. "But you can outsmart them, use their expectations against them. They'll expect you to be weak. Prove them wrong by being clever instead." By the time they finished, Elena was drenched in sweat and trembling with exhaustion. But she'd successfully executed a takedown on Sienna, admittedly because Sienna let her, but still. "Better," Sienna said with something almost like approval. "You're not hopeless. High praise from you. I don't coddle people. The trials won't either." Sienna tossed her a water bottle. Rest for an hour. Then Lydia wants you for political strategy. Lydia's lessons were somehow more brutal than physical training. She grilled Elena on territory boundaries, pack hierarchies, historical conflicts, and the complex web of alliances that governed supernatural politics. Every wrong answer was met with a sharp correction and a reminder that mistakes in politics got people killed. The Western territories border us to the south, Lydia said, pointing to a map. They've been our rivals for centuries. Donovan Sterling's grandfather tried to assassinate Kale's father in 1847. The attempt failed, but tensions remain. So this challenge is personal? Everything in our world is personal. Lydia's smile was sharp. Politics is just war by other means. Remember that, and you'll survive. By dinner time, Elena's head was spinning with information. She ate with the court in the formal dining room, aware of the wolves who kept appearing at the Windows Pack members hoping to catch a glimpse of their new queen. They're curious, Garrett explained when he caught her looking. A human-born queen is rare. They want to see if you're worth following. No pressure, Elena muttered, echoing Vera's earlier words. Felix laughed. You're handling it better than the last human-born queen. She locked herself in her rooms for 3 days after the bonding. You're already training and learning. That counts for something. What happened to her? The last human-born queen? The table went quiet. She passed the trials, Isaiah said carefully. All 3 of them. Ruled for 62 years before she and her mate died, defending the territory from hunters. Died together? Mates who are truly bonded can't survive without each other for long, Kale said quietly. When one dies, the other usually follows within days. The bond is that strong. Elena looked at him, really looked at him. This beautiful, powerful creature who'd bound himself to her forever. You knew that when you accepted the bond. Yes. So if I die in these trials, you won't. His voice was steel. I won't allow it. You can't control everything, Kale. Watch me. His eyes flashed silver. I've lived for centuries alone. Elena, now that I've found you, I'll burn down every territory in existence before I let someone take you from me. The raw possessiveness in his voice should have been frightening. Instead, Elena felt it through the bond. His absolute conviction. His fierce protectiveness. His love. Then I guess I'd better not die, she said lightly. I'd hate to be responsible for starting a war. That earned surprised laughter from the court. See? Felix grinned. She's going to be fine. Any queen who can joke about starting wars has the right attitude. But later that night, alone with Kale in their rooms, Elena let her fears show. What if I'm not strong enough? What if I fail and it destroys everything you've built? Kale pulled her close, and she felt his heartbeat against her cheek. Steady, strong, eternal. Then we rebuild. Together. But Elena, you won't fail. You're stronger than you know. You survived invisibility. You'll survive visibility too. You keep saying that. Because it's true. You've been fighting your whole life just to be seen. These trials are just a different kind of fight. He tilted her chin up, his amber eyes holding hers. And this time, you're not alone. You have me. You have the court. You have an entire pack who's already half in love with their clever, brave queen. I don't feel brave. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. He kissed her softly. And you, Elena Thornwood, are the bravest person I've ever met. Through the bond, she felt his absolute certainty. His unwavering faith. Maybe, just maybe, he was right. Maybe the invisible girl who'd become a queen had one more transformation left in her. From overlooked to unstoppable, she had 1 week to become worthy of her crown. 1 week to prove that human-born didn't mean weak. 1 week to show the Western territories and herself that Elena Marsh Thornwood was a queen worth following. The training began at dawn, and Elena was ready. Chapter 9. Trial by Fire. The week passed in a blur of bruises, sleepless nights, and information overload. Sienna drilled her in combat every morning until Elena could anticipate attacks, redirect momentum, and execute basic defensive maneuvers without thinking. Her enhanced healing meant injuries that would have sidelined a human for days disappeared overnight, though they still hurt like hell in the moment. Lydia's political lessons were mental torture. Elena memorized territory boundaries, pack genealogies, historical treaties, and the labyrinthine rules governing supernatural diplomacy. She learned that a misplaced word could start wars, and silence was sometimes the most powerful weapon. Isaiah taught her to feel the pack bonds, how to sense distress in her wolves, how to project calm through the golden threads that connected her to hundreds of souls. It was overwhelming at first, like standing in a hurricane of emotions. But gradually, Elena learned to filter, to focus, to find individual voices in the chaos. Felix ran scenarios with her historical trials, famous queens, both successes and failures. Queen Mariana of the Southern Territories faced a riddle challenge in 1623, he explained one evening. She had to solve 3 impossible riddles or abdicate. She solved 2, but the third stumped her. Know what she did? What? She challenged the riddle itself, proved it was logically unsolvable, which meant the test was unfair. The challenger had to withdraw or admit he'd designed an impossible trial. She won through cleverness, not knowledge. Felix's grin was sharp. Remember that. The trials test your mind more than your body. By the morning of the first trial, Elena felt marginally more prepared than she had a week ago, which was to say, still terrified, but at least competently terrified. The Western delegation arrived at dawn. Alpha Donovan Sterling was exactly what Elena expected: tall, broad-shouldered, with steel-gray hair and eyes like chips of flint. He radiated the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. His entourage consisted of his second, a sharp-faced woman named Bridget, and 3 other wolves, who watched everything with predatory interest. The trial would take place in the formal receiving room, witnessed by both courts. Elena entered wearing armor disguised as elegance, a tailored suit in deep charcoal, her hair in a severe bun, the moonstone circlet marking her as queen. Kale walked beside her, his hand at the small of her back, his presence both reassuring and territorial. Through the bond, she felt his tension, his barely contained violence. If Donovan tried anything remotely dangerous, Kale would tear him apart. Easy, she thought at him, still getting used to their mental connection. I've got this. His response came back warm and fierce. I know you do. Alpha Sterling, Kale said coldly as they took their positions. You've invoked the trial of 3. State the terms of the first test. Donovan's smile was all teeth. Intelligence and political acumen, as tradition demands. I've prepared a scenario for your queen. He said the word like it tasted sour. A test of her ability to navigate complex diplomatic situations. Proceed, Kale said. Donovan turned to Elena, his expression condescending. You're presented with the following situation. 2 packs under your rule are on the brink of war over a territorial dispute. The River Pack claims the Moonridge Pack has been hunting in their territory. The Moonridge Pack claims the boundaries were always unclear and they've hunted there for generations. Both alphas demand you rule in their favor. Both threaten to leave your territory if you rule against them. What do you do? The room fell silent. Elena's mind raced. This was a classic no-win scenario rule for either side, and she'd lose the other pack. But there had to be another option. There was always another option. She thought about Felix's story, about Queen Mariana, challenging the riddle itself. I refuse to rule, Elena said clearly. Gasps from both courts. Donovan's eyes narrowed. That's a forfeit. No, it's not. Elena stepped forward, her voice carrying across the room. The scenario you've presented contains a false premise. You said both packs threaten to leave if I rule against them. But packs don't leave territories over single disputes. They leave when they no longer trust their leaders to be fair. The real problem isn't the territorial dispute, it's that both alphas feel unheard. She was improvising now, but through the bond, she felt Kale's approval, Lydia's sharp attention. So instead of ruling, I'd do 3 things. Elena held up her fingers, counting off. First, I'd visit both territories personally, show both alphas that their queen cares enough to see the disputed land herself. Second, I'd convene a joint council with both packs present. Let them argue their cases in front of their people, not just their leaders. And third, I'd propose a compromise, designate the disputed area as neutral hunting ground. accessible to both packs but belonging exclusively to neither. Shared territory under royal protection. She looked directly at Donovan. Political acumen isn't about making everyone happy. It's about making everyone feel heard while finding solutions that serve the greater good. A queen who rules by fiat loses her people's trust. A queen who listens and adapts keeps her territory strong. Silence. Then Bridget, Donovan's second, spoke. She's right. That scenario was designed to have no good answer. She found one anyway. Donovan's jaw clenched. The first trial tests intelligence, which she demonstrated by deconstructing your trap and offering a viable solution none of us considered. Lydia's voice was satisfied. I've been second in this territory for 40 years. Alpha Sterling. I've seen queens face this exact scenario. Most choose a side and accept the loss. Elena chose a third option. That's intelligence. The trial is concluded, Kale said, his voice brooking no argument. My queen has passed. Do you dispute this, Alpha Sterling? Donovan looked like he'd swallowed glass. No. The first trial is passed. Through the bond, Elena felt Kale's fierce pride. 1 down, 2 to go. But Donovan wasn't finished. His smile turned predatory. Congratulations, Queen Elena. You've proven you can talk your way through problems. Let's see how you handle the second trial. The second trial isn't scheduled for another week. I'm invoking the acceleration clause. Donovan's grin widened. If the first trial is passed decisively, which you claim it was, the challenger can demand the second trial proceed immediately. It's in the ancient laws, King Thornwood. Check your books. Kale's fury blazed through the bond. That clause hasn't been invoked in 2 centuries, but it's valid. Alistair, surprisingly, spoke up. I remember the law. If invoked, the second trial must proceed within 24 hours. What? Elena looked between them. But I've only trained for a week, which is why he's doing it. Felix's expression was dark. He wants to catch you unprepared. The second trial, Donovan announced, will take place tomorrow at dawn. The challenge is this: survival. Queen Elena will be taken to the Blackwood Forest neutral territory and given a 12-hour head start. Then my wolves will hunt her. If she survives until sundown without being caught, she passes. If we catch her, she fails. Absolutely not. Kale's eyes were blazing silver. That's barbaric. That's traditional. Donovan spread his hands. Queen Isabella of the Eastern Territories passed this exact trial in 1789. As did Queen Louisa in 1923. It tests courage, resourcefulness, and survival instinct. All qualities a queen needs. Those queens had months of training. Then perhaps your queen isn't ready to wear the crown. Donovan's smile was vicious. Unless you're suggesting we declare her unfit and end this farce now? The trap snapped shut. If Kale refused, he'd be admitting Elena wasn't ready. If he accepted, he'd be sending her into a hunt with minimal preparation. Elena felt his rage through the bond, his desperation, his desire to refuse regardless of consequences. Kale, she thought at him, I have to do this. They'll hunt you like prey. Then I'll be clever prey. She stepped forward before he could argue. I accept the second trial. Tomorrow at dawn, Blackwood Forest, 12 hours. Donovan's eyes gleamed. Excellent. I look forward to the hunt, Your Majesty. After the delegation left, the receiving room exploded. This is insane, Garrett growled. She's had 1 week of combat training. She doesn't need to fight. Sienna interrupted. She needs to not get caught. Different skill set. 12 hours in Blackwood Forest being hunted by trained trackers? Nora shook her head. That's nearly impossible even for experienced wolves. Then we make it possible. Vera's voice cut through the arguments. We have 18 hours to prepare. Let's use them. I should refuse, Kale said, his voice strained. Diplomatic consequences be damned. I won't risk you. Yes, you will. Elena took his hand, pulled his attention to her. Because refusing makes me look weak. Makes you look weak for bonding with someone who can't handle the trials. This is what I signed up for when I accepted the crown. You signed up to be queen, not prey. I signed up to prove I'm worthy of you. Of this pack. Of this life. She squeezed his hand. Trust me, Kale. Trust that your wolf didn't make a mistake when it chose me. Through the bond, she felt his fear. His love. His absolute terror at the thought of losing her. But beneath it all, she also felt his faith. 18 hours, he said finally. We train you for 18 hours, and then you show Donovan Sterling exactly what it means to hunt a queen. They didn't sleep. For 18 hours straight, the court worked with Elena in shifts. Sienna taught her evasion techniques, how to mask her scent, how to move silently, how to use terrain for cover. Dominic showed her which plants could be used for camouflage, and which would make her sick if she had to hide in them. Felix drilled her on Blackwood Forest's geography, pointing out potential hiding spots and danger zones. Lydia, surprisingly, taught her psychological warfare. They'll expect you to run, to hide, to be afraid. Use that. Lead them in circles. Make them doubt themselves. A hunt is as much mental as physical. Isaiah worked with her on using the pack bonds. You're connected to every wolf in our territory now. During the hunt, you'll be able to feel when they're close. It's not precise, but it's enough to give you warning. And Kale. Kale stayed with her through all of it. His presence constant. His fear leashed but palpable through their bond. As dawn approached, Elena stood in their rooms, dressing in the clothes they'd chosen, flexible, dark, designed for movement and stealth. Her body ached with exhaustion, but her mind was sharp with adrenaline. Kale helped her lace her boots, his hands gentle despite their strength. Come back to me, he said quietly. Whatever it takes, Elena. Come back. I will. She cupped his face, felt the roughness of his jaw. I'm not that invisible girl anymore, remember? I'm a queen. And queens don't give up. Queens also don't have to prove themselves by being hunted. Yes, they do, because that's the price of this crown. She kissed him softly. I love you, Kale Thornwood, and I'm going to survive this hunt, just to see Donovan Sterling's face when I do. That earned her a fierce smile. That's my queen. They walked together to Blackwood Forest as the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The Western delegation waited at the forest's edge. Donovan stepped forward, his smile predatory. The rules are simple. You enter the forest now. At noon, my wolves begin hunting. If they catch you before sunset, you fail. Any questions? Just one, Elena said. When I win, will you admit you underestimated me? Donovan laughed. When you lose, will you admit you never deserved that crown? Elena smiled. I guess we'll find out. She turned to Kale one last time. Through the bond, she felt everything he couldn't say, his love, his fear, his absolute faith in her. Then she stepped into Blackwood Forest, and the hunt began. Chapter 10, The Queen's Gambit. The forest swallowed Elena whole. Ancient trees rose like cathedral columns, their canopy so dense that even morning light struggled to penetrate. The air smelled of moss and decay, and something wild that made her enhanced senses sing with warning. She had 6 hours before the hunt began. Elena ran. Not in a straight line, Sienna had drilled that into her. Predictable paths get you caught. Instead, she wove through the trees, doubling back, crossing streams to break her scent trail, using every trick they'd taught her. Her body was different now, stronger, faster than it had been before the bonding. She could run for miles without tiring, could leap over fallen logs that would have required climbing before. The transformation hadn't made her lycanthrope, but it had made her more. After 2 hours, she stopped at a stream to rest and think. Lydia's words echoed in her mind. They'll expect you to run. Use that. What did hunters expect from prey? Fear, exhaustion, mistakes born from panic. Elena had spent 26 years being overlooked because she met expectations, stayed quiet, stayed small, stayed invisible. The moment she'd stopped conforming to expectations was the moment her life had changed. So, what if she stopped acting like prey? She closed her eyes, reached for the pack bonds. It felt like touching live wires, hundreds of golden threads connecting her to distant wolves. Most were too far away to sense clearly, but there. She could feel Kale, his anxiety blazing like a beacon. And there, Vera, Sienna, the court, all gathered at the forest's edge, waiting. And there 5 threads that felt wrong. Foreign. Cold. Donovan's wolves, already in the forest. The hunt doesn't begin until noon, she thought furiously. They're cheating. But of course they were. This wasn't about fairness. It was about making her fail. Elena's fear crystallized into anger. Then the anger sharpened into something else. Determination. If they wanted to hunt her, she'd make them earn it. She spent the next 3 hours preparing. Using her belt knife, a gift from Vera, she cut branches and created false trails leading in 3 different directions. She found a patch of wild garlic and crushed it, rubbing the pungent oil on her clothes to mask her scent. She located a dense thicket of blackberry bushes and carefully created a hidey hole inside, ignoring the thorns that tore at her skin. Her enhanced healing closed the scratches within minutes. Then she climbed. The oldest oak tree in the area had branches thick enough to support her weight. Elena climbed 20 feet up, settled into a crook where she was hidden by leaves, and waited. Below her, she'd left her jacket on the ground near the blackberry thicket. With any luck, they'd think she was hiding inside. At noon exactly, she felt it through the pack bonds Donovan's wolves flooding into the forest. 5 of them, moving fast, spreading out in a search pattern, and they were heading straight for her false trails. Elena smiled grimly. Good. For 3 hours, she watched them hunt. They were good following her scent trails, checking her false leads, communicating through howls that echoed through the forest. But they were also cocky, expecting an easy capture. They found the blackberry thicket around hour 2. She heard them circling it, growling in frustration when they realized it was empty. She's clever, one muttered, a woman's voice. Probably Bridget. More clever than we gave her credit for. She's still human-born, another replied. She'll make a mistake eventually, keep searching. But Elena didn't make a mistake. She waited until they moved past, then silently climbed down and headed in the opposite direction. Used the stream again to break her trail. Found another hiding spot, a fallen log hollowed by rot, and crawled inside. 4 hours until sunset. Through the bond, she felt Kale's anxiety ratcheting higher. Could almost hear his thoughts. Where are you? Are you hurt? Please be safe. I'm fine. She tried to send back, not sure if it would work. I'm winning. Whether he received it or not, she felt his emotions shift slightly. Hope mixing with fear. At hour 5, she heard Donovan's voice through the trees. She can't have gone far. Fan out. Check the northern quadrant again. He was here. The Alpha himself had joined the hunt. Elena's heart hammered. 5 wolves she could potentially evade. But Donovan was experienced, ruthless, and motivated to see her fail. She needed a new strategy. Through the pack bonds, she reached out carefully. Most of the Northern Territory wolves were too far away to help, but there at the forest's edge she felt Sienna, waiting, watching. Elena concentrated, trying to send a specific message through the bond. It was something Isaiah had mentioned in passing, that queens could communicate through the pack bonds, though it required practice and focus. Sienna. Northern quadrant. Distraction. She felt a flicker of response, acknowledgement. And then, minutes later, the sound of howling from the northern edge of the forest. Donovan's wolves immediately shifted direction, drawn toward the sound. That's not one of ours, Bridget said. It's from Thornwood's pack. They're not allowed to interfere, Donovan growled. That's against the rules. The rules say Elena can't receive direct help, but if Northern Territory wolves happen to be running their own borders. Bridget's voice held reluctant admiration. She's using her own pack as a distraction. Clever little bitch, Donovan said, but there was respect underneath the insult. After them, make sure they're not actually helping her. As the western wolves moved away, Elena emerged from her hiding spot and ran in the opposite direction. 2 hours until sunset. She was starting to believe she might actually win. That's when she heard it, a different howl. Closer. Coming from directly ahead. Elena froze. Through the bonds, she counted. 5 western wolves moving north toward the distraction. Donovan with them. That should be everyone. But this howl came from a 6th wolf. They brought backup, she realized with dawning horror. More than 5. They stacked the deck. The wolf emerged from the trees, a massive gray male with scars across his muzzle, and eyes that held intelligence and cruelty in equal measure. "Hello, Your Majesty," he said, shifting to human form. He was middle-aged, heavily muscled, and blocking her only escape route. "Name's Garrett. Not your Garrett, Western Garrett, and I'm the one who's going to catch you." "The trial specified 5 hunters," Elena said, backing up slowly. "The trial specified my pack could hunt you. Didn't specify how many." His smile was vicious. "Loophole. Clever, right? Almost as clever as using your pack for distractions. Kale will what? He can't interfere without forfeiting your trial. And by the time anyone proves we cheated, you'll already have failed." Western Garrett advanced. "Nothing personal, Your Majesty, but Alpha Sterling wants you to fail, and what he wants, he gets." Elena's mind raced. She couldn't outrun him, he was lycanthrope, fully shifted. She couldn't fight him despite Sienna's training. He outweighed her by 100 pounds. She couldn't call for help without forfeiting, but she could be clever. "You're right," Elena said, stopping her retreat. "I can't beat you physically. But tell me something, Garrett. When you return to your Alpha having caught a queen who survived 5 hours against 6 wolves instead of 5, how do you think that makes him look?" Garrett paused. "What? You said it yourself, loophole. Clever, but also desperate. Like Alpha, Sterling was so afraid I'd win that he had to cheat." Elena straightened, despite her fear. "You catch me, and everyone will know your Alpha couldn't beat me fairly. Is that really the victory he wants? He wants you to fail. He wants me to look weak, but catching me with 6 wolves makes him look weak." Elena took a calculated risk and stepped closer. "Here's what I think happens. You let me go. You tell your Alpha you searched the southern quadrant and found nothing. I survive until sunset, and when I pass this trial, there's no asterisk next to it. No questions about fairness. Just a clean victory. Why would I do that? Because you're a wolf who follows a strong Alpha, and you know that cheating diminishes his strength. Because deep down, you want to see if I can actually survive on my own merit." Elena held his gaze. "And because if I do become queen when I become queen, you want me to remember that you were the one who gave me a fair chance." Silence stretched between them. Western Garrett stared at her, his expression unreadable. Through the bond, Elena felt Kale's distant panic. He could sense her fear but didn't know why. Then, slowly, Western Garrett smiled. "You've got titanium ovaries, Your Majesty. I'll give you that." He stepped aside. "Southern quadrant's clear. I found nothing. You hear me?" "Nothing. Thank you," Elena breathed. "Don't thank me. Just win. And when you're queen and dealing with politics between our territories, remember this moment." He shifted back to wolf form. "Now run. Before I change my mind." Elena ran. She ran until her lungs burned, and her enhanced healing couldn't keep up with the scratches from branches and thorns. She ran until the sun began its final descent toward the horizon, painting the forest in shades of amber and gold. 1 hour, 30 minutes, 15. Through the bonds, she felt Donovan's wolves closing in again, drawn by her exhaustion and the sound of her passage. They were close, too close. Elena burst out of the forest just as the sun kissed the horizon. The clearing at the forest's edge was full of wolves. Northern territory on one side, Western territory on the other. Kale stood at the center, his eyes blazing silver, every muscle tense to spring. Elena stumbled, fell to her knees, gasping for breath. Behind her, Donovan and his 5 wolves emerged from the trees. They stared at her in shock. "Sunset," Lydia announced, checking her watch. "The 12 hours have elapsed. Queen Elena has survived the hunt." Silence. Then Donovan laughed, a genuine sound of surprise. "Well, damn. She actually did it." Kale was suddenly there, pulling Elena into his arms. Through the bond, she felt his overwhelming relief, his pride, his love. "You did it," he sent. "You magnificent, brilliant, impossible woman." "The second trial is past," Bridget said, stepping forward. Her expression held grudging respect. Your queen has proven her resourcefulness and courage, King Thornwood. The Western Territories acknowledge her worthiness. But Donovan wasn't finished. 2 trials passed, 1 remains. His smile was sharp. The 3rd trial tests heart and character. It's scheduled for the new moon 2 weeks from now. We'll return then for the final test. He and his wolves left without another word. Elena sagged in Kale's arms, exhaustion finally claiming her. But through the haze, she heard Vera's voice. 2 down, Your Majesty. 1 to go. And Felix, laughing. Did you see Donovan's face? She made them look like fools. And Isaiah, warm and proud. That's our queen. As Kale carried her back to the estate, Elena closed her eyes and smiled. She'd survived. She'd won. And in 2 weeks, she'd face the final trial. The one that would determine, once and for all, whether she was worthy of the crown. But tonight, wrapped in her mate's arms, feeling the pack's approval through the golden bonds, Elena allowed herself to believe something she'd never thought possible. Maybe she was worthy. Maybe the invisible girl had finally become unforgettable. Maybe queens weren't born, they were forged. And she was still being shaped. If Elena's transformation from overlooked to unstoppable has moved you, if you believe that true worth isn't given but earned through courage and cleverness, subscribe now. Share this journey with others who understand that sometimes the crown chooses you, but you have to prove you deserve to wear it. Her final trial awaits, and she'll need all the strength she's discovered to face what comes next. The invisible girl became a queen. But the hardest test is still to come. Chapter 13. The Queen's Gambit. 2 weeks passed in a strange kind of peace. Elena trained, but differently now. Not for survival or combat, but for leadership. She sat in on court meetings, learned to read pack dynamics, visited the individual packs within the Northern Territory. Everywhere she went, wolves bowed, not out of obligation, but respect. She'd earned that by surviving the hunt. But the 3rd trial loomed like a storm on the horizon. Heart and character, Lydia said during one of their lessons. It's always the hardest because there's no preparing for it. They'll present you with an impossible choice, usually a moral dilemma where every option has a terrible cost. Like what? Queen Helena was forced to choose between saving her mate or saving 50 pack members trapped in a burning building. She chose the pack. Her mate survived through sheer luck, but the choice nearly destroyed her. Lydia's expression was grim. Queen Isadora had to decide whether to execute a wolf who'd committed treason or spare him because he was her sister's mate. She executed him. Her sister never spoke to her again. These trials are cruel. They're designed to prove you'll put the pack above personal desires, that you'll make the hard choices queens must make. Lydia's hand found Elena's. Whatever Donovan presents, remember, there's no wrong answer if you can justify it. Character isn't about being perfect. It's about being consistent with your values. The night before the trial, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of their rooms, watching the moonless sky. The new moon, a time of endings and beginnings. Kale's arms wrapped around her from behind. You're afraid, terrified. The other trials tested things I could prepare for. Intelligence, survival. But character? How do you prepare for that? You don't. You just trust that the person you've always been is the person you need to be. He turned her to face him. Elena, you've already proven your character. You called for help when you were dying instead of giving up. You faced a room full of predators without backing down. You survived a hunt through cleverness instead of giving in to fear. Whatever Donovan throws at you tomorrow, you'll find the answer. What if the answer is terrible? What if I have to choose between? Then you'll make the choice, and I'll support you, no matter what. His eyes, amber in the darkness, held absolute certainty. I love you, Elena Thornwood. Not because you're perfect, but because you're brave enough to keep trying even when you're scared. That's what makes you a queen. She kissed him, drawing strength from his certainty, his love, the bond that connected them. Whatever came tomorrow, she wouldn't face it alone. The Western delegation arrived at dawn, but this time they brought witnesses. Representatives from 4 other territories, Eastern, Southern, Central, and Coastal, stood in the formal receiving room. The 3rd trial would be observed by the supernatural community at large. Elena's performance would be judged, not just by Donovan, but by the wolves who would one day be her peers and allies. No pressure. Elena entered wearing the full regalia of her position. The moonstone circlet, a gown of silver that seemed to capture light, and an expression of calm she didn't quite feel. Kale walked beside her, his presence steadying. The room fell silent as they took their positions. Donovan stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Queen Elena, you've passed 2 trials, intelligence and courage. The 3rd trial tests the quality that defines all great rulers, the strength to make impossible choices. Are you ready? I am. Then hear the scenario. Donovan's voice carried across the room. A rogue wolf has been captured on your territory. He's killed 3 humans in a neighboring town, violating the most sacred law of our kind: never reveal our nature to humans. The punishment for this crime is death. However, investigation reveals that the rogue is not acting of his own will. He's been infected with a blood-cursed dark magic that strips away rational thought and forces him to kill. Elena's heart sank. She could already see where this was going. The wolf is Garrett Stone's younger brother, 23 years old. Before the curse, he was gentle, kind, beloved by his pack. Donovan's eyes gleamed. The curse can be broken, but it requires a rare ingredient: phoenix tears. Acquiring them would take months, and there's no guarantee of success. During that time, the rogue must be imprisoned, where he suffers constant agony from the curse. Or you can grant him a merciful death now, ending his pain but killing an innocent victim of dark magic. The room was silent. Elena looked at her Garrett, from the Northern Territory. His face was a mask of anguish. This was his worst nightmare made real. There's a 3rd option, Donovan continued. You can refuse to execute him, and refuse to imprison him. Release him to his family's custody. But if he kills again while under their watch, you and Garrett are held accountable for those deaths. Your crown, Garrett's position, and the territory's reputation all forfeit. Impossible. Every option was devastating. Execute an innocent victim of magic? Imprison him in agony for months with no guarantee of cure? Risk everything on the hope his family could contain him? Through the bond, Elena felt Kale's horror, his rage at Donovan for creating such a cruel scenario. But she also felt something else: the pack bonds. Hundreds of threads connecting her to wolves who were watching, waiting to see what kind of queen she would be. Elena closed her eyes and reached deeper into those bonds. Found Garrett's thread blazing with grief and desperate hope. Found his pack's threads mourning a young wolf they loved. Found the threads of wolves who'd lost family to rogue attacks, who wanted justice. Everyone had a stake in this decision. Everyone would suffer no matter what she chose. There's no right answer, Elena realized. That's the point. Character isn't about being right. It's about being true to your values even when every choice hurts. She opened her eyes. I need more information. Has the rogue what's his name? Donovan blinked, clearly not expecting questions. Nathaniel Stone. Has Nathaniel killed since being captured? No. He's been imprisoned for 2 weeks. And the curse, can it be suppressed? Managed? Anything short of breaking it completely? Unknown. The curse is rare. There's little research. Elena turned to Garrett. If I gave you time, not months but weeks, could you find a way to suppress the curse enough that Nathaniel isn't suffering constant agony? Garrett's eyes widened. Possibly. We have a witch in our pack, and I could call in favors from other territories. But your majesty, even if we suppress it, he'd still be dangerous. Then he stays imprisoned, but under humane conditions. Not torture. Not endless agony. Imprisonment with treatment and dignity, while we search for a cure. Elena turned back to Donovan. Here's my decision. Nathaniel Stone will be imprisoned under my personal authority. Garrett will lead a task force to research the curse and find either a cure or a reliable suppression method. They have 90 days. If after 90 days we haven't found a solution, I'll revisit the question of execution. But I won't kill an innocent victim of magic without exhausting every possible alternative first. And if he escapes? If he kills again? Donovan pressed. Then I take full responsibility. The blood is on my hands, and I'll face whatever consequences the supernatural community demands. Elena's voice was steady. But I won't execute a 23-year-old wolf for being cursed any more than I'd execute someone for being poisoned. We find the cure. We break the curse. And if we can't, Then I'll make the harder choice when the time comes, but I won't make it today based on fear of what might happen." Silence filled the room. Then one of the visiting representatives, a tall woman from the Eastern Territories, spoke. "That's the answer of a queen who values life, who understands that mercy and justice aren't opposites." Another representative, from the South, nodded. "She's chosen the hardest path. Not the easy execution, not the naive release. She's taking responsibility while giving hope. That's leadership." Donovan stared at Elena for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. "You know what the correct answer was supposed to be? There is no correct answer. That's why it's a test of character, not intelligence. The correct answer," Donovan continued, "was whatever decision you could live with. Whatever choice reflected your values, regardless of outside pressure." He turned to face the gathered witnesses. "Queen Elena has demonstrated compassion balanced with responsibility. She's chosen mercy without naivety, hope without foolishness. The Western Territories recognize her as worthy." He approached Elena, and to her shock, he bowed. "You've passed all 3 trials, Queen Elena Thornwood. You are recognized by the territories as a true queen, intelligent, courageous, and compassionate. May your reign be long and your decisions always this wise." One by one, the other representatives bowed, then Kale's entire court. Then, through the windows, Elena saw the hundreds of pack members who'd gathered outside, all bowing to their queen. The weight of the crown suddenly felt real, heavy, but also right. Through the bonds, she felt her pack's approval, their acceptance, their love. Kale pulled her into his arms, and through their bond, she felt his overwhelming pride, his love, his absolute certainty that she was exactly who she was meant to be. "You did it," he whispered. "You're queen. Truly, unquestionably queen." Elena looked around the room at the alphas who'd tested her, at the court who'd trained her, at the pack who'd accepted her, at Garrett, who had tears streaming down his face because she'd given his brother hope. She thought about the invisible girl who'd once transcribed medical reports in a basement office, who'd been too plain, too forgettable, too nothing. That girl was gone. In her place stood Elena Marsh Thornwood, Queen of the Northern Territories, mate to a Lycan King, leader of thousands. Visible. Valued. Victorious. "Yes," Elena said, and her voice carried across the room with authority she'd earned through fire and fear, and sheer stubborn courage. "I am." And somewhere in the distance, the pack began to howl a song of celebration that echoed through the forest, announcing to every territory from coast to coast, the Northern Territory had its queen.